Call this first meeting of the first session of the 119th Iowa State Student Government to order. We will start with roll call, and I made my rounds trying to learn everyone's last name, but excuse me for this first meeting, I'm still learning. Senator Agba. Senator Bruick. Present. Senator Burks. Senator Chu. Senator Dre. Senator Yzma. Senator Engelken. Senator Frencher. Senator Go. Senator Hackbarth. Senator Holliday. Senator Hirsch. Senator Kohlhaas. Senator Kuehler. Senator Malahañez. Senator Mahoney. Here. Senator Mays. Senator Masker. Senator Momani. Senator Montalvo Martinez. Senator Patel. Senator Peterson. Senator Schnepp. Senator Shivraj. Senator Slade. Senator Slater. Senator Tanzi. Senator Thornton. Senator Topete. Right? Topete. And Senator Vo. Yes. Oh, yes. All right, gotcha. All right, we will now move into the Pledge of Allegiance with Acting Speaker Bruick.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. With no program tonight, we'll move into our open forum. This is a time for students of the student body to approach matters related to the student body. Please approach the podium and state your name and major, and you will have 5 minutes.
It's philosophy and sociology. And I sat where y'all were sitting 3 years ago. I was a senator for 2 years, and this past year I served as your finance director. I'll still be around for the next few weeks as I still have the P card, and it takes a while for our next finance director to get that one, so I'll still be making purchases and doing workday stuff. But I just want to talk for a second about what my experience was in student government and how it can inform your experiences in student government as senators. So I'll start off by saying each and every one of you is here for a common purpose, to serve the student body and to improve the student experience. And that's a very lofty goal. It's not very tangible, but that's in a very general sense what you want to do in this position. And so I would need y'all to kind of just be in the mindset that you're all here for the same reason. There are going to be times where you disagree on what serving the student body looks like. There are going to be times when you disagree on what the role of Senate should look like in the grand scheme of student government, or times where you disagree about for what purpose you're serving the students. But at the end of the day, that common purpose should be something that can all tie you together to overcome those disagreements. There are 3 things that I have written down, 3 things about what can make that disagreement a little bit easier to swallow. The first one is respect for each other. A lot of the times we are apt to paint people as two-dimensional just because, not anybody in this room specifically, but just generally, because it's easier to say that you're right. Your job in this position is both to be an advocate and a judge. When you think that there's a position that ought to be taken that nobody's advocated for, please make that point, because somebody else might be able to riff off it and realize that there's something really there. And if you think that the other position for there is being a judge, at any given point, you really need to be not only advocating for your own position, but also weighing your own arguments against those of others. And when you come to vote, that's when you have to be a judge and not an advocate. The second thing is to treat each other as equals. Everybody in this body has the same motion-making power, the power to write a bill. By the way, here's a hack for writing a bill. Just find a similar bill and copy it on a Google Doc, and you're like 80% of the way there. That's really handy. But treating each other as equals is going to put you in a position where you will treat other people's arguments as if they were your own. Treat arguments for your own position critically, treat arguments for others' positions charitably. And through that process, you're going to find out that there are things that you initially disagreed with that you end up really supporting. Also, and then the third way to disagree with each other and make this a very productive body is to actually like each other. That's pretty handy. So I would just like to emphasize a little bit the importance of just like hanging out in the office, getting to know each other as individuals, hanging out outside of Senate, making friends with the people that you're going to have substantial working relationships with over the next year or hopefully over the next years. So actually liking each other and having that social aspect to Senate and that approach to student government is a way that I think really helped me in Senate. So a question that I didn't ask until about this time last year, why does student government exist? It's to serve that purpose. Of course, we're created by the state legislature, or we're mandated by the state legislature because we disperse student activity fees, and that's a very bureaucratic creation. But we exist because people, for the last 119 years, as Speaker Ulrich said, or Vice President Ulrich said, 119 years ago, we decided that this kind of body was necessary. And so that common purpose, again, should be able to unite you throughout your time in student government. So just as a kind of general point, if at any moment you're thinking that what we're doing right now isn't serving that purpose of serving students and improving the student experience, ask yourself why you're doing that. Ask yourself one more time. If it's because you're following a rule and because, and the only reason that somebody's objecting is because it's a rule and not because there's any principled reason behind that rule, ask yourself whether the rules are worth following. All these are open questions. If there's something that you don't like in the bylaws, write a bill. Writing a bylaw bill is not something that's exclusive to Rules Committee. It's something that literally any senator can do. And if you just want an idea, go to a member of Rules Committee and give them your idea, and they'll help you flesh out the bill. All that is something that I would really encourage all of you to do as you're going through student government. Parley Pro is similar. Parley Pro is hard. It takes a long time to get used to, but it's only ever a tool. If that tool is not serving this body, consider whether it needs to be articulately followed or whether some general consensus is good enough. That's something that the body should be considering. So then the second big thing I have tonight as the outgoing finance director, I guess this will be 2A and 2B. 2A, student activity fees are the fee that is paid by every single student, all of you, hopefully, I guess. It's $44 per semester, $22 over the summer, and that goes directly to this body to disperse. A very small percentage of it goes to GPSS. But for the most part, that is our discretion to use as we think it improves student activities and serves the students. So that's a pretty weighty consideration that you all have to consider. I'll let the future finance director really flesh that out for you all. That's a long presentation that you'll get because it is pretty complicated, but it's something definitely worth understanding. And another piece of general advice, ask questions when you have them. People are happy to help, and also make mistakes. That's one of the best ways to learn is by straight up doing something wrong, but hoping that you'll get the right answer by doing it wrong. Just don't be afraid in this body because this is a body where we're all equals and we're all going to make mistakes. So then the very last thing I have, the 2B, sitting back there, Kit Claiborne is the person who's been nominated to be finance director for FY23. I would just like to throw my words of support behind former Senator Claiborne. Last year he was on the committee. He was the first finance outreach and reduction of disparity director. He won Senator of the Year last night. Congratulations again, Kit. And I think that he is a really stand-up person to perform in this role. Finance director is a very difficult role. It's compensated with a 3/4 tuition scholarship. Speaker's also half. President is full, and vice president is 3/4. For those of you who didn't know, some chief officers are compensated. And so that's why you should have a pretty critical eye when you're putting somebody in this kind of position, because it is student activity fees that they're getting paid with. With that said, former Senator Claiborne is absolutely fit for the job. It's tough. It's a lot of hours, especially in the spring. But I have full confidence that that Claiborne's going to be able to do the job. So hope you all have a great year. There's going to be a lot on your plate. You have a lot of opportunities, and the potential that the Senate has as a body is huge. I'm sure Senator Claiborne will talk about it, but last week we funded a $30,000 project, $37,000 project to create a gender-neutral bathroom in Lead. That's just one example of the resources that student government gives you all as members to pursue projects that can directly improve the student experience. So, yeah, that's my 2 cents. Y'all are going to have a great year. Thank you.
Mason's great. Everything he said really holds true. I want to touch on what student government is and why it exists, and I guess sort of the importance of this role. Students make this campus what it is. Students make this university what it is. Everything here is built around our existence as students. Without students, there is no university, there is no university administration, there is no student government. And what makes student government really special, in my experience, is that it is the only place where strong student power and interest constantly accumulates on a long-term basis. As Jane just said, this is the 119th student government in some form, and I think that really speaks to the importance and the longevity of an organization such as this. Something I really like to come back to is that student government, or at the time as it was called, Cardinal Guild, built this building, built the Memorial Union in the 1920s. We kept control of it until the early 1990s, at which point the university ended up taking it over. But if those of you ever make it down to the basement in the Memorial Union, you will still see an old notice from the Union Student Board admonishing other student organizations into keeping the place neat and orderly for visitors. A notice written by actual students, not administrators, not people whose jobs it was, professional jobs, but a student board managing this building, managing the space. I'd like to bring that up because it is a testament to what students can do. It is a testament to what this organization has been and what it can be and what all of you can achieve. This is not to say that the university is bad or it's taken away our control or anything of the sort. But I guess what I'm trying to say is student interests are distinct, student interests are powerful. And sometimes that means you will be conflicting with administration members, members you're talking to for your projects who might have a different idea of what students want. And you have, if you truly believe what you're doing is right and you think your constituents are backing you, the right thing to do is to go ahead and make your point hard and not be afraid to bring it up just because it's a full-time adult you're talking to. It's important for us to be vigilant, be active, be strong, and be united. We owe it to our fellow students. Disagreement is what makes this body what it is. If any of you have seen a Senate meeting, you will know that once you've been here for a little bit, we will have a bill, and you will be going back and forth, literally fighting until the last word to change commas and periods on bills to make it mean exactly what you want it to. And that is beautiful. That is what makes Senate what it is. But know that you're debating ideas, not people. This is a battle of ideas, not a battle of personalities. And what makes Senate really special is our separation of professional from personal. I've had people I've battled to the death on the floor, and then we walk out of those doors, and that's it. That's the end of it. We go out, we grab a drink, we joke, we have fun with each other. We hang out in the office, which is downstairs, by the way. One of us will show you where it is after the meeting, I'm sure. But that's what makes this organization really special. That being said, history is not kind to those who sit around simply because they enjoy the title, or that work only because they enjoy or they think it makes them important. This organization is about passion, it's about service, and it's about serving your constituents. The second part of what I want to talk about today is something I've noticed a lot in Senate. It's called the bicycle shed effect. I think the formal name is the Parkinson's law of triviality. But I'm going to go into a little story to illustrate what I'm saying here. Imagine a business meeting that's been called to discuss a two-point agenda. The first item seeks approval for a nuclear reactor that's worth $10 million. Don't worry about the numbers. The second item is a proposal to build a bicycle shed for the workmen there, and that costs $350. Once the meeting starts, the $10 million reactor contract gets approved in 5 minutes, primarily because it's a really, really large sum, and you will see up to $1 million bill coming through at some point in your term towards the end of it. It's such a large sum that people can't quite comprehend it, and also because, in any case, it's way too technical. Everyone assumes that it's such a big decision that everyone's done their homework. One person who understands reactors tries to make a point, but discovers no one else really understands what he's saying and no one's really interested, and it gets approved in a jiffy. And now we go to the second item, which is the $350 bicycle shed. Now, everybody in the room is familiar with bicycles and bicycle sheds. The HR representatives talks passionately about the company's tradition of taking care of employees. The finance person says he cycles to work every day. He leaves his bicycle out in the sun and he's never had any problems. He thinks this is an unnecessary expenditure that we don't really need to have. Someone else pipes up and says, well, aluminum as a roofing material is really expensive. Let's use asbestos instead. It'll save us $50. This goes on and on for an hour. And ultimately, after multiple amendments, the bicycle shed is approved. Gray in color with an asbestos roof. Everybody goes home happy that their fruitful deliberations helped them save $50. This happens in a lot of meetings, and in the 3 years I've been in Senate, I've seen it happen a lot. We tend to fixate on the smaller things, and when that happens, we lose sight of the bigger issue. We lose sight of student interests, we lose sight of the true impact that we can have, and we have 3-hour-long Senate meetings that we all walk out of feeling perturbed. It comes out of what I imagine is an urge to sort of, and I've had this too, I will be completely guilty of doing this myself, is we focus on the smaller things, and we want to speak up because I guess what I'm trying to say is, as you're going through, try to be objective. We can truly have an impact, but we can only have that when we don't lose sight of the larger goal. So don't be afraid. We're all learning here. As I'm sure you all noticed from me, even after 3 years in this organization, chairing a meeting, I tripped up on a bill and missed a step I shouldn't have, and I needed help from somebody within the body to help me do things right. I guess what I'm trying to say is we're all learning. There's really nothing to be afraid of. My one regret is not doing more earlier. And that's because I was afraid. I was afraid of what people would think. I was afraid of making a mistake and people thinking I wasn't smart enough or that I was not good enough. Don't be me. You can do so much more. And you truly have the ability to make an impact if you apply yourself to it. Please don't lose sight of that. With that, I will yield, and possibly for the last time ever, Mr. President, I yield. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I think I'm supposed to say my name and my college, so I'm Dawson Weathers from the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. I'm the former speaker of this body. Good to be back for maybe, hopefully, the last time. It's a lot of fun, but it wears on you, especially if you let the tedious things like they talked about bring you down. I think Finance Director Zastro and former Vice Speaker Debate had really good points there. I tried to impart my wisdom last night at inauguration, so I won't lecture you any further. My particular points are on the legislation up here tonight, so I'm addressing you as a student. I've brought this point up with a couple of the senators, but I just want to emphasize to everybody in this body that all of the bills up there that are nominating people to hold positions for the rest of the year are extremely important, and they require your thorough attention. If you think somebody's unqualified, or if you think they aren't familiar with the job, or if you would rather see somebody else in the position, I think it's your duty to leave the seat vacant for a week or 2 weeks or longer rather than have someone who's unqualified or have the wrong person in the position for the rest of the year. So don't be afraid to vote no. Be generous, but don't be afraid to be scrutinous and critical with it. Speaker and Vice Speaker are up for nomination. It's this bot. Yeah, I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. It's your decision. But just be sure that you're being very critical. Ask questions about the duties of the role, and then make sure that they can fulfill them. And then the last thing on there, I think it's on new business. We have some sort of bylaw change. I would encourage you not to rush through that. I doubt very many of you in here are familiar with bylaws. Even I, who was tasked with managing the bylaws, don't know all of them. There's some that I still don't understand. So I would maybe wait on that, wait until there's a rules committee, maybe hold that a week. As you read through it, there's going to be some things that you're confused by. So if you don't want to hold it for a week, which I would recommend, at least ask a lot of questions about it and make sure you're prepared for it before you pass anything. I'll be sitting in the back if anyone has any questions, but this is all of your time to shine. I hope you all have a great year.
With that, we will now go into adopting tonight's agenda. Is there a motion to do so?
Mr. President,
Senator Bruick.
I move to make the amendments to the agenda reflected on the screen. Second.
It has been moved and seconded to strike one and add, or strike two and add one motion as reflected on the screen. Is there any discussion on this? Senator Bruick.
Hi, so the changes that are being made are, they're relatively minor changes. They've been cleared with the proper stakeholders. Our Director of Sustainability is unable to make it to this meeting tonight, or the nominee for Director of Sustainability is unable to make it for tonight, so we won't be able to see his bill. The nominee for Director of Academic Affairs needs to be confirmed tonight, so we're moving them onto the agenda and up. And there's a issue involving our the Senate appointment to the SIRIDE Board of Trustees. So we are holding off on electing that position until at least next week, so we can get the discrepancy with that resolved. So that's all that these are. And with that, I yield.
Question has been called for and seconded. Is there any objection to voting now on the amendments as reflected on the screen? Seeing none, unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objections? The amendments pass. Back on to adopting tonight's agenda. Is there a motion to do so? Is there, the agenda has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, is there call to question? Is there a second? Perfect. Is there any objection to voting now on adopting tonight's agenda? Unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objection to adopting tonight's agenda? Seeing none, tonight's agenda has been officially adopted. We will now move on to approving the minutes of last week's meeting. Is there a motion to do so? I guess last term.
Mr. President, I move to
So they're just kind of assumed approved, so there are no minutes to approve for this body.
All right, well, that's that. Going into committee reports, I know there's none standing right now, but we did have a meeting for each of these committees last week, and so we would just, we're going to go through these. I'm just going to start with rules, if anyone wants to talk. I was pointing at you two, but.
Is it okay if I speak, Mr. President? Okay, yeah, rules didn't meet last week. I don't have anything to impart on you any further. I would just recommend that any bills that would usually be sent to rules be held off for a little bit until there actually is a rules committee. So don't rush anything through. Yeah, I don't have anything.
Finance Committee.
Mr. President, may I have the floor? Thank you. So Finance Committee also did not meet last week. I did want to give context on a few bills that will be coming down the pipeline for first read next week, so you'll see them for the last meeting of this term, ideally. All these are in Kate Claiborne's court, should he be confirmed. But there are three bills that are going to be amendments to existing contracts. We have the first one is amending a contract with Student Legal Services. This is just an increase in the rent from the anticipated cost when we initially signed the contract, so that one is just pretty straightforward. Student Legal Services is a contract of about $350,000 per year. We are the sole funder of Student Legal Services, and so everything they need from their like Ethernet lines to the salary of the employees gets paid through by us, so any changes that they have need to be reflected in our contract. The second one is the Iowa State Daily contract amendments for those of you who were on last term. There is an amendment that we have presented to the board on our meeting last Thursday, and that they seem completely amenable to the exact wording that was presented to them. So there will be a bill proposing that language for first read next week, hopefully. And then the last one is an amendment to our Articles of Cooperation with the Graduate and Professional Student Senate. It took me like 363 days to learn that I had been misunderstanding how the allocations for GPSS worked. It's pretty minor, but it doesn't impact very much how our income gets calculated. It's like a 3% difference, but for how their income gets calculated, it's much larger. It's probably something closer to 25%. So that's the way that it has actually been dispersed in the past few years, but it has not been accurately reflected in our Articles of Cooperation. So we're going to be having an amendment for that coming up. And then the last bill I'd like to speak on is the special student fee and tuition committee. This committee is really important, and you're going to be seating a member tonight. The members for this past year were President Julie Campbell, Senator Victoria Philby, Chief of Staff Ludwig at the time, now President Jacob Ludwig, and myself. And us four, along with two members from GPSS, sat with a few members of the upper administration. Toy Younger, Bonnie Whalen were both on there, among others, to decide what the student fees are going to be. That includes the student activity fee. That includes the fee for the Memorial Union, for SciRide, for student counseling services, rec services. There's a lot of stuff here, and in total, it is over $800, and we sit through long presentations about the intricacies of why any of those fees would need any more money. It is a very detail-oriented committee, and I would highly encourage anybody who's seeking to be on that committee this year. It's a really great experience for those of you looking for like institutional, kind of be in the room with upper administration advocating for specifics of what students see valuable per dollar. But I would really recommend whoever that is that gets on that committee to be somebody who's on finance committee. It's not required, but I would encourage anybody who's interested in that committee to also be interested in finance committee. That's something that hasn't always been true in the past, and I just think it would be helpful going into the future. People who are on finance committee are kind of better set up to be in the role of finance director in the future, and just having somebody who's returning for multiple years would be helpful. To have that kind of year after year knowledge. I know nobody on the committee last year was on the committee this year for the fee committee. And at times we were like texting people trying to figure out what the previous years people had said. So yeah, that's just a thought for me, not required again, but I would encourage it. So then if Finance Director Appoint Claiborne wants to say anything, I'll toss the speaking privilege over to you. No? All right. Thank you.
We will now move on to PR committee if there's a representative that would like to speak.
The only thing that PR committee did last week was we voted on funding the balloon backdrop that you saw last night at inauguration, and then the 3 exec members of PR have just been working on transitioning to the new people.
Wonderful. Diversity committee, if there's any representatives here that would like to speak.
Not really much. Obviously, we're still in transition phase, and the next director will have transition documents from Director Booman now, and also I am here next year. Obviously, I will hopefully be seated as finance director, but diversity inclusion is still my little baby. So if anyone has any questions, just ask.
Student Initiatives Committee, if there's a representative present that would like to speak.
Mr. President, may I have the floor?
Yes.
Okay. Howdy, folks. I'm the Student Initiatives Chair Emeritus now, former Senator Seth. I see new faces. Welcome, all the new faces. I'm happy to see all of you here, and I look forward to seeing what y'all do in the next year. The big update from Student Initiatives Committee is that tomorrow at 8 o'clock, we will be meeting at that fountain just outside to do the safety walk. So for those of you who don't know what the safety walk is, we basically hang out with a bunch of staff members from the university, and we walk around different parts of campus and note any issues with safety. So think maybe a street light's out or the pavement's really rough or something like that. So I would encourage all of you, especially new senators, to come to this event. It's a great way to start interacting with university administration, start building relationships with those people. More than likely, depending on what committees you sit with, you'll probably be working with administration because we do a lot of that in student government. And also just meet other senators and other members of student government. So again, to reiterate, tomorrow at 8 p.m., outside, just right out there by the fountain. Yes, and there will be Jimmy John's. So if you like Jimmy John's, you should show up. And let's see, did I have anything else? Yes, and then we'll be seating a new SI chair tonight. So whoever gets the new SI chair position. I'm excited for you, and I look forward to seeing what you do. And we will, of course, be in communication with transition and stuff. And if you have any questions, or any of you, if you have any questions, you can always just send me an email or anything like that. But yeah, I think that's all I have.
The Local Affairs Committee, if there's a representative. Seeing no one move into the Sustainability Committee, is there a representative here that would like to speak? Seeing none, we will move into comments from the Judicial Branch.
Hi, I'm the Chief Justice, for anyone that doesn't know. I don't normally talk and probably won't pester you that often, but we are a resource for you. A lot of us have spent way too much time, especially with the rules of the court, but that doesn't really pertain to you all that often. But with looking at the bylaws and understanding the Constitution, and we don't have a term. So for anyone that's new, if you have questions, come to one of us. I'm in the office a lot, but so are other people on the court, and we currently have a few openings if you know anyone that's interested. But
Now on to comments from our Student Government Advisor.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Sophia Sarver. You can call me Sophie. I am the Student Government Advisor. This is my full-time job. So I am here to support the organization, all three branches, and just kind of help you with whatever projects, goals, and initiatives you have. A few things, if you ever would like to get in contact with me, I'll be handing out business cards next week, so look out for that. But before then, my office is actually down in student engagement. So if you go downstairs and Panda, you kind of can't miss it. And if you turn, and there's like a cove, and in there is the e-student office space. My office is in there if you need me anytime. Also, I will be giving a program next week on what I do, so look forward to that. It's extra fun. Oh, you good? Okay. And finally, I'll be sending out an email. I would like to meet with all of you just before the end of the semester, just to get to know everyone. It doesn't have to be super long, but just like a nice touch, like a nice hi, because I really don't get to talk to you in this setting. So I'd like to get to know all of you and just chat. It'll be real casual. But yeah, that's all I have. I hope you have a good meeting.
And finally, comments from the Executive Branch.
Good evening, everyone. You should have all received the executive update just a little while ago. If you haven't, just email me and I can get you a copy. But just a couple basic things in there. Most of it was cabinet selections. We filled all the positions except for Director of International Student Experience and Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. We are still going through some final interviews with last couple candidates for those two. Other than that, I, along with the outgoing administration, and then Kit Claiborne, met with the ISU Daily, their incoming editor-in-chief, outgoing editor-in-chief, and then some of their full-time professional staff last week to talk about some potential amendments to the contract that will potentially be seen later in, I think, next week. So that'll change some of the valuation changes year to year regarding like exactly what we pay the Daily, just to kind of reflect the downturn in enrollment that we've experienced at Iowa State. So you'll be seeing more details on that in the near future. Jaden and I also, a couple weeks ago, along with former President Campbell and Vice President Decker, met with Provost Wickard, mostly a transition meeting, but also talking about the Reimagine LAS initiative, and then also some of the details around the class transition period in between classes and how that might be changing in the upcoming academic year. So we're excited to work with Provost Wickard and his team in the upcoming year to kind of make some positive changes on campus. From there, Jaden and I also attended a meeting with the Board of Regents last week, the Student Leader Breakfast. Had the opportunity to meet with the leaders of the other Regent institutions, student governments. The meeting was primarily about some of the accomplishments over the last year and where we're kind of hoping to go next year. The next Board of Regents meeting is in June, which is when they will vote on changes to tuition and fees, and Jaden and I will be present for that one. Other than that, at the end of it is the 5 executive orders that I've signed this week. mostly housekeeping items, clearing out the executive orders from last year, appointing a few individuals. The biggest one on there that's probably of most interest is the Budget Review Task Force. I've established a Budget Review Task Force that will look at some of the priorities, the way that we're spending money in student government, and how we can best spend dollars in student interest over the next year, and hopefully keep the fee as low as possible in years to come so that we can keep costs low for students on campus. So if you have any questions about any of that, I would be happy to take them.
Are there any questions for President Ludwig?
Thank you.
So seeing none, we will move into external matters. There are no external matters. We will move into internal matters. There are no general orders, and so we'll move into special orders, starting with 2022-1-001 SG, electing a new Speaker of the Senate with Senator Bruick.
Hi, everyone. So this is our first bill. So we're going to be electing the new Speaker of the Senate. The Speaker of the Senate is an incredibly important role. As I believe Mason said in his open forum comments, it is compensated by a half-time scholarship. So I think it gives you a little insight into the amount of time and effort and importance of the role that we are effectively paying this person to do what they do. Some of the roles, some of the duties of the Speaker include making the agenda for the meetings, and chairing and seating the Rules Committee that overlooks all of our bylaws and internal processes. They serve 10 hours in our student government office in order to meet the student engagement requirements for keeping that office. They serve as the parliamentarian for the vice president, and basically a whole host of other things that are incredibly important to our body. So I guess I just want to reiterate something that Speaker Emeritus Dawson said in his open forum, that this is a very important role. So vet your candidates very, very thoroughly. This person is going to effectively be, in charge of the Senate in a sort of way. They're going to be the representative of the Senate in all official business. So they're very important. So, do your due diligence tonight as we vote on these candidates. With that, I yield and I move to open the floor for nominations.
Is there a second? Second. The floor is now open for nominations. If you would like to nominate someone, just raise your placard. I'll call on you and then call out that person. I'll then ask the nominee, to either accept or decline, and you can nominate yourself. Senator Thornton.
I nominate Senators Bruick and Senator Mahoney.
Senator Bruick, do you accept? I accept. And Senator Mahoney, do you accept? I do. Senator Patel.
Hi, I'd like to nominate Senator Emmy for the role.
Senator Thornton, do you accept? Are there any further nominations for Speaker of the Senate? Seeing none, is there a motion to close the floor for nominations? Second. It has been moved and seconded to close the floor for nominations. We will now invite our three nominees to the podium. You each will have 5 minutes to speak. Following all three of you will then be a time for questions. I will ask each of you just to present in the order you were nominated, and I will tap the gavel like this when you have 30 seconds remaining. Your time starts when you do.
Hello, everyone. My name is Andrew Brick. I am an off-campus senator, and I'm running to be your Speaker of the Senate. I'll start off with a little bit of history about myself in student government. I have been in student government since the spring semester of 2020. In my time in student government, I have served as an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court, and I later was selected to be the Chief Justice of that court, just like Mr. Cecil is now. And in that role, I served as a Chief Officer, which are the core leaders of the various branches of student government. They include the Speaker of the Senate, the Vice Speaker of the Senate, the President, and the Vice President. I served in that role until February of this year when I decided I wanted to take on a role that was more focused on student issues. So I ran for the Senate, and here I am. Now, I could talk a lot about my time as a chief officer, as chief justice, and how that prepares me for this role, because I believe it does, but that's not what I want to focus on. I instead want to focus on 3 big points that I intend to accomplish if elected as your speaker for the coming year. Point 1, with this first point, I wanted to find a way that I could internally serve student government in my role as speaker. And so I came up with this idea for bi-weekly committee chair meetings. This idea would have all the various committee chairs, all the ones you heard reports from earlier today, meeting with the speaker and vice speaker to kind of share and exchange ideas. This idea was inspired by the time, a couple weeks ago, I sat in on a meeting of the subcommittee of SI trying to plan the Take Back the Night sexual assault prevention meeting, and they had to postpone their event because of procedural issues with getting the event approved through university's event authorization system. And it really bothered me that that happened. And it kind of made me think, and maybe I am incorrect in this, but that if maybe there had been more eyes from the rest of student government and the rest of our leadership in the Senate on this event, maybe we could have prevented that. I don't know if that's true, but I'd like to be able to take that. I'd like to be able to prevent that in future. And I believe that a committee chair committee would help prevent that. So that's my first point. My second point, for the second point, I wanted to focus on something external, something outside of student government that I could affect. And I settled on the issue of food insecurity. According to the National College Health Assessment, 1 in 3 Iowa State students suffer from food insecurity, with disproportionate effects on students of color, international students, and students in identity-based groups. And I feel like that's unacceptable. The good thing for dealing with food insecurity is that we have a food bank on campus, SHOP, that can help provide free food to students who need it. The problem that we do have is our current funding process and the priorities and criteria you've heard mentioned before provide a severe hurdle for us funding purchases of food with student dollars. I intend, if elected as speaker, to refine and change those rules so that our relationships with SHOP can be continuous and better, simply put, in order to help fund add resources for students who are food insecure. With my third point, I wanted to think about something that I could really relate to personally in my experiences with student government. And so I settled on the issue of election reform. As the Chief Justice, I was the head of the Judicial Branch, which the Election Commission is a part of. So I was intimately familiar and interacted frequently with the leadership of the Election Commission. And what I found in my time there and in my time running for this body in the most recent election campaign was that our process is very confusing and provides a very high bar of entry to students looking to get involved. And I also don't think that is acceptable. I want every single person on campus who's interested in student government to be able to have a viable, realistic chance of sitting in this room just like you and I. So those are my 3 points. To close, I want to lead with an idea about the speaker that I have. I talk about how important the speaker was when I introduced this bill, and I believe that's very true. The speaker is incredibly important, but the speaker exists to serve you. The speaker is an advocate and an aide for the rest of the Senate body. They are not above you. They're not better than you. Their bills that they write are no more interesting or more correct than anything that you can write. If I am elected as your speaker, I will do everything in my power to make sure that you can succeed with your goals, whatever that may be. And with that, I yield.
Speaker of the Senate. I'm sure there are a lot of you in this room wondering just what Speaker does. They have a lot of responsibilities, both formal, as laid out in our governing documents, and informal, as part of our culture. The Speaker is tasked with setting the agenda for Senate, preparing all of our legislation once sent in, maintaining our bylaws and Senate rules of order, tracking outreach credits, and cases of nonfeasances and misfeasances. In essence, they need to be somebody who's organized and on top of things. I've had the pleasure of being treasurer for 2 different House cabinets, a hall council, and for the last 2 years, the Computer Science and Software Engineering Club. If any of you have been a treasurer or worked with the COA office, you know how organized you have to be, dealing with all of the paperwork and the transaction verifications. Formally, the Speaker chairs the Senate Rules Committee. which sees all major nominations, contracts, and other legal bills and legislation that come across the Senate. They are one of the most important committees in that role. And over the last year as a senator, I've had the opportunity to first be a clerk of the Rules Committee, where I've learned how it and Senate student government operates, as well as our bylaws and rules. And for the past semester, I've had the opportunity to be a voting member, providing my insight into bills, helping amend prospective legislation, and write several of my own bills and bylaw changes. If elected, one of my major goals for the summer would be to do a clean and fresh rewrite of a lot of our bylaws and Senate rules of order, as there are major architectural and operating issues with the current set after 16 years of existence and amendments that I think are best tackled with a clean slate. Finally, at least formally, the Speaker is an ex officio member of every other committee within student government. One of our major issues over the last year has been our own internal communication. And as Speaker, I would like to make it a point to visit semi-regularly with every committee, to listen, learn what projects are being worked on, and perhaps provide some insight from my past 5 years of experience as a leader on this campus. That way, there would be somebody in the organization that has a high-level overview of what everyone is working on, and I could help facilitate internal communication between our various committees and Senate members, helping connect people between groups and projects. Informally, the Speaker ultimately is a guide, or a shepherd, if you will, for Senate. They represent the wants and desires of the Senate to other branches, as well as the university administration and other outside parties. They help facilitate conversations on the Senate floor, which I've had plenty of experience doing last year and my previous 3 years as a member of IRHA Parliament. And they help direct the efforts and focus of Senate and student government as a whole. As somebody who has dealt with it, one of my major focuses has been on mental health. And I would like to use my roles as Speaker and as Senator to reignite the mental health task force at the university level, to better coordinate the efforts of all the various organizations and departments, and provide student feedback on the issue, as since this is ultimately something that affects us most deeply. And I want student government to be the one to lead that charge. Broader than just that, I was on the campaign team for President Ludwig and Vice President Ulrich and helped write their campaign platform. With a unified vision of all the chief officers of student government, our potential to accomplish our goals for the next year are huge, and I'm excited for what it will look like. The relationship between the executive branch and the Senate is crucial, and Speaker is a major bridge between the two. I count many collaborators and friends amongst the executive branch, and this is a year where I think the relationship could be stronger than ever. My name is Eddie Mahoney. I'm graduating in computer science in May, and will be here as a graduate student next year. And I humbly ask for you to vote for me as Speaker tonight. The Speaker wears many hats. In my experience over the last 5 years, being treasurer for various organizations, a member of IRHA Parliament, Director of Leadership for IRHA, Technical Director for Greek Week Central, Executive Event Director for Carolyn Crashtacular, various positions within Tau Kappa Epsilon fraternity, and a Senator for the Residence Halls on Student Government, writing constitutions, bylaws, and bills, being a leader and a guide for others, and being a part of so many debates, uniquely prepares me to take on the mantle of a responsibility of Speaker. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I would just like again to congratulate all of you and welcome you to your first meeting. I'm Emmy. I represent design. I'm a fourth-year architecture student entering my fifth year this fall. And I would like the honor of serving as your speaker in the upcoming year. Just to quickly remind you again that the role of the speaker is to ensure that Senate runs smoothly, send bills to committee, set programs for the beginning of Senate, among other duties. I would be working alongside Vice President Ulrich and the Vice Speaker during Senate to answer your questions in the upcoming term. Out of all of us asking for your consideration tonight, I'm the longest serving senator. I was elected last May with the other two asking for your consideration entering later on. I've held positions on our rules, student initiatives, and diversity, equity, and inclusion committees. I've spent over 30 hours in the office since this last spring, committed to doing student government body work, and I've done over 7 hours of outreach events connecting with constituents. My Instagram is always up to date with what's happening on campus, even during the campaign season this last spring. First and foremost, I serve students, and I will help you so that you can continue to serve your constituents as well. I have a few goals that we can work towards together, but I know that we'll be successful. I also want to remind you that the speaker is here to serve you, and I know not to bite off more than I can chew personally, so that I can help ensure that Senate itself is successful and that I don't get bogged down too much with my own personal goals for the success of Senate. Similar to what you experienced this evening with our 3 former representatives coming to open forum, what I would like to do is have a few short programs in the early fall to refresh you on what parliamentary procedure looks like and maybe bill writing as well. This series of programs would wrap up in about a month, but would be a great way to help you feel confident in how to approach Senate for the remainder of the year. The Rules Committee is also already tasked with bylaw review each year, but I'd like to look closely at comparing each section of our bylaws and Senate rules to ensure that the details of our operation are equivalent. If you're unfamiliar with bylaws and Senate rules, they're 2 separated documents for how we proceed. The last goal of mine would be to prepare a retreat and several other bonding experiences for all of student government throughout the year. The retreat we had this last fall was great, and there are some opportunities to build off of it for the incoming Senate. It is important to have bonding opportunities throughout the year to decrease the divide between us on and off the floor so that when contentious bills come up, we can debate civilly. We've had discussion earlier during open forum letting us know that it's important to create friendships. It's easier to do that within the Senate office, but it's much easier to do that outside of the office when we can have fun going bowling. The bonfire at the retreat was an amazing experience. Some of us got our nails done before inauguration. It's the small things that don't necessarily require student dollars, maybe our own dollars, or maybe nothing at all, like playing some ball on Central Campus. Small things like this that help us feel more connected, encourage us to be able to speak up on the debate floor, but then also make it so that we're not at each other's throats outside of the office and outside of the floor as well. Thank you for your consideration, and I look forward to answering any of your questions and serving you further in the future.
Yes, this is a time for discussion, or feel free to ask any of the candidates any questions you may have. Senator Kuehler.
Okay, everyone, so I do have a question for all 3 of you. So I guess I'll just kind of start in the order that you spoke. Senator Bruick, I do like your point about election reform, and I just was hoping maybe you had some specifics on that, specific issues, and maybe some more elaboration on how you would plan to address them.
Yeah, sure thing. So one of my biggest issues with election code right now is the election code itself. It's for those of you, I believe we've all seen it. We were all elected here. It is a many-page, many-chapter document with a lot of sections in it that have a lot of different interactions and references to other sections. Basically, what I'm trying to say is it's a complicated document to have dropped on your lap when you decide, hey, I want to make a difference. I want to run for Student Government Senate. It's a lot very quickly, and it has a lot of technicalities that can get you into trouble if you're trying to succeed in running. I guess one of the issues actually that recently came up in this election cycle that bothered me enough to make this one of my 3 big points was we had within UROC, within my own constituency, several of the top vote getters and people who were elected to serve UROC were disqualified due to a lack of outreach credits and a failure to complete their student revenue financial form. And I guess my issue with that is that, what's the word I'm trying to find? The issue I'm kind of having there is that those were dedicated, motivated students. I've spoken to some of them at our outreach events. They would have made a huge difference and been incredible representatives in this body, and they're at home. They aren't here making decisions that impact their student body and bringing their unique voice to this campus, despite putting in, I believe, as much effort as you or I did here today. So that's my real concern, and I find it, I guess, frankly unacceptable to this student body and to this organization that bright, intelligent, motivated young people are being excluded due to, at times, arcane regulations and pointless hoops to jump through. As Finance Director Zastro brought up during his open forum, if a rule doesn't have a principled reason behind it, well, then why are we following it? And sometimes that thought comes to mind when I think about the people who we've excluded from this body due to our many, many rules for getting elected. So that's basically what's behind that point there, and that's what I'm trying to look at there.
All right, thank you very much. That was an excellent clarification. Senator Mahoney, you mentioned a mental health task force. Now, I myself am unfamiliar with what this is, and I'm sure a lot of the new members of this body are also a little confused. So if you could just elaborate on what that is and why this would specifically benefit all students.
So the Mental Health Task Force is a supposed university level committee that exists, and it's a meeting of the minds of sorts of some of the various different departments across campus. Kinsey Phillips, the ISU PD mental health coordinator, who I've worked very, very closely with over the last year or so, was the first one to key me in on this, and they don't really meet. It used to meet a lot more often, and then as all things happened, the pandemic happened and it sort of fell apart. They meet very, very infrequently. There's no student representation on it. But I think that's something that could be highly effective if there was something of student representation on it, student government representation on it, and a more regular meeting. There's a lot of different organizations on this campus doing a lot of different things to try to tackle the mental health crisis that we as a student body and as a campus are facing. There's a large dearth of resources, but there's a lot of overlap between resources. And so I think a centralizing committee, this mental health task force, could be a great resource and a great focuser to try to help unify the efforts that we as a community and we as a university are making. One of the things that I've worked on very recently was mental health first aid training, and while we didn't quite get as many people involved as we wanted to due to the perennial problem of advertising, that's a continued problem that we're going to be addressing into the next year, I think it's a great start. And I see it and the mental health task force being a very key component on how we could, as a student government, as a student body, try to tackle the major issue of mental health here on campus. I think similarly, there's a platform point on Senator Ludwig, or President Ludwig and Vice President Ulrich's platform about pushing for what's called the SIPAC, which would essentially allow us as members of the Iowa state, or state of Iowa, to reach out to mental health resources in other surrounding states. We really just need legislator buy-in, and I think this unified focus at the university level could really help push that point forward. So I think it could be a great, great focus and a great, great collaborative space so that we as a student body and as a student government can really, really work on tackling this major, major issue.
All right, thank you very much. And Senator Thornton, so I was a little confused on, it sounded like you mentioned bylaw review or comparison. So I was just hoping if you had some more like elaboration on that and I guess why it's an issue, because I'm a little confused. So.
Yes, so the main thing that rules does every year is just review the bylaws and make sure that things are condensed as possible, that there's no redundant bylaws. This year we found bylaws that were completely blank, like there was a number and there was nothing following it. We removed things like this. What I would also like to do is just make sure that vote counts are consistent between each section of the bylaws, making sure that they are still saying, like, if you want to vote to amend something, then that vote count is consistent throughout each section of the bylaws, as well as the rule of order. Similar to what Senator Mahoney has said, how he wants to do an overhaul. This is something that we've all talked about together as like a collaborative effort. This isn't necessarily something that I'm claiming as my own, but it is something that I've mentioned before. Some of you might remember when I was inducted into the Rules Committee, that I do have a passion for reviewing the bylaws, making sure that they're as simple to understand as possible as well, and just making sure that we're really going through them in a very thorough manner.
All right, thank you, and with that, I yield.
Senator Yonting.
Yes, so there's a lot of great initiatives. Ask questions regarding to your. So this is the. Your time commitment. How would that affect your role as speaker?
Sure thing. It's a very good question. It's very important to have time to dedicate to such an important role. As far as things stand, my next year is wide open. Obviously, I'll be taking classes. I'll be taking 15 credits, of course. But I don't have any major time commitments that I cannot, move around to fit my own schedule. There will be absolutely no issue about me dedicating my time to this role and to this body. I have no concerns whatsoever that I can fulfill the role in that aspect. Does that answer your question?
While I will be a graduate student next year, frankly, in the computer science department, a lot of the graduates, once you get to a lot of the graduate level courses, they actually step back in terms of the time commitment. So I fully expect to have plenty of free time next year. Those of you that know me right now, I am still incredibly busy with a lot of my classes, but I still manage to spend well in excess of 10 hours in the office every single week, just as currently sitting senator. It's been one of my great opportunities to really get to know a lot of people and make those kinds of connections. So I would purposely schedule my classes next semester to make sure that I can continue to do that because, well, just as a senator in general, it's a lot of fun.
The benefit of being a fifth-year architecture student is that really the only class you have that goes late is Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So it would be fairly easy for me to be able to commit that 10-hour office hour commitment. And as I mentioned earlier, I'd already committed well over the minimum office hour commitment for senators. So I don't foresee this being an issue for the upcoming year if I were to become speaker.
You yield. Senator Tanzi.
I just want to clarify something really quick. Senator Brewer talking about the election code, and I just wanted to clarify. Were you talking about the elimination of the election code, or just a complete referendum, or?
No, so I'm not in favor of eliminating election code. Election code has a lot of stuff that is important and good. The entirety of elections are contained in there. If we eliminated it, we wouldn't have elections. I don't plan on doing that. What I am planning to do is working with President Ludwig, working with Chief Justice Cecil, and whoever Chief Justice Cecil appoints as the new election commissioner, to look at our election code and really dig into what the reasoning and ideas behind each part of election code, particularly the ones that burden running candidates, what the reasoning and basis for each one of those is, and whether it really is necessary for them, and whether it's worth, as I said before, disqualifying qualified, motivated applicants and interested parties from this body if the justifications for doing so really, fit the bill. So that's what I intend to do. It would be closer to, as we talked about, my other candidates talked about with looking over the bylaws in general, it would be closer to just a look over, a review of election code, but a focused and very seriously intending to change the content of that code. It wouldn't be anything, it would not be standard. It would be very seriously, we need to do something about this. Does that answer you? Yeah. Great.
Senator Schnepp.
Hi, yeah, overall, you guys have kind of talked about what you want to do for the job as speaker, but I'm kind of wondering what you each individually want to get out of this job. What do you see for yourself at the end of having this position?
That's a very, very good question. I'm running for speaker for the same reason that in February of this year, I decided to step down from my role as Chief Justice and run for the Senate, because I want to be an advocate. Now, a little bit about myself. I wish to be a lawyer. That is my career goal. Plan on going to law school once I graduate from this university. And one of the things that's incredibly important to understand about lawyers is they are advocates. When you have a client, not only is it your job, it is your ethical and professional and moral duty to advocate for that person's position no matter what, no matter if you disagree with it or your own moral qualms with whatever you may be arguing. if you do not do that, you can't be a lawyer anymore. That gets you kicked out of your job. So the same reason that I'm drawn to that profession is why I'm drawn to be a senator and the speaker. Because one of the first, I believe in the bylaws, the first official formal role of the speaker is to be the official representative of the legislature. And that's why I think I want to be speaker, is to be the person who, regardless of whether I agree with the decision made by Senate or the actions being taken by other senators, is going to forcefully and fearlessly advocate for the interests of this body. That's what I am here to do, and that's why I feel like I can run for speaker. That's why I feel I have the knowledge and the experience to do so. Like I said, I have already done a similar role as the Chief Justice. I represented the entire Judicial Branch. It's not a very big transplant. Does that answer your question? All right.
So when I first came to campus in 2017, it didn't take me very long to get involved and to pick up leadership positions and to start working on improving the student experience. It started with my House Cabinet, eventually Hall Council, moved up to IRHA. But in that entire time, I always wanted to make the biggest impact that I could. There was talk my freshman year of eventually running for student body president or vice president with a friend, and plans change, things happen, and that never came quite to pass. But for me, this is close. I want to walk out of here in April, early April, when my speakership would hopefully be up, and be able to say that I helped make this Senate as effective as it could, that I helped each and every one of you in this room grow to be the best leader that you could be. I'm getting a minor in leadership studies, not to further my own leadership potential, but to help others do it, to help guide them, to help teach them, to help them develop themselves as a leader. And that's one of the biggest roles that the speaker has, is to empower each and every member of Senate and each and every member of student government to be the most effective representative that they can possibly be. That would be the biggest triumph for me as speaker. That's why I want to be speaker, is to be able to help every single one person in this room achieve the goals they got elected on and the things that they want to get done.
First, excuse me, I just love that you asked this question, because when I have students as a DIS leader, that's the exact kind of question I ask them, like, what do you want out of this experience? And if I were speaker, I would ask every single one of you, why did you join Senate? What do you want out of your Senate experience? How can I help you get that? So I'm really glad that you asked me that, because I do want to share with you like why I want to be your speaker and what I want out of this experience. I want our largely new Senate to have someone that they won't be afraid to ask questions of. I want there to be an approachable leader for people to look up to, so that Senate doesn't seem so daunting and overwhelming in your first semester. I also want the opportunity to be involved in planning the large events for our Senate. I know that I'm best suited to organize these large events for the body, as well as consistently put out reports, because I have experience doing so. I worked as a supervisor for over 30 students at any given time, before as a senior program assistant at the ISU Foundation Phone Center, and I currently work in administration planning large-scale events. I'm also confident that I can help our new senators with writing bills, because I've written and edited bills in the past. I've also reviewed bills for others when they lack the time to do so. This happened just the other week. A senator was so overwhelmed with what they had going on. I don't know what the task was, but they needed to have a bill reviewed. And I just jumped in and reviewed the numberings on this bill so that they didn't have to focus on that, but that it still got done on time. I stood outside directing you guys where to go so that you could arrive in time for the mock. Not because I was trying to get your attention and let you know that I was running for speaker, but because I wanted you to feel welcome. I wanted you to have a presence there saying, hello, welcome to student government. We're right there on the left. I want to be that kind of person for you all year, not just at the very beginning, but I want to be that kind of comforting presence for you. I want to be able to be that leader you can rely on. Yeah, thank you.
Senator Kuehler.
Okay, so you guys are all very qualified candidates. I don't think anyone in this room or in this body is gonna like argue against that. But I would like to talk, or you guys to talk a little bit more about yourselves as individuals. So I guess my question is, maybe, well, I guess it's not really a question, but I would like you to tell me your greatest strength, and as well, in addition to that, your greatest weakness, and maybe how you're working to address that. Because I think Speaker is arguably the most important position in Senate, and learning about you guys as individuals is going to be vital so we can all have the best information and make the most informed decision.
I guess I'd have to say, if I were going for my greatest strength, I think it's my willingness and capacity to learn and my general knowledge of things. I tend to be the kind of person who throws themselves into whatever information is put before myself. I have read through the entirety of our bylaws multiple times on multiple occasions. Read through the Constitution many times. Just to give an example, a couple of weeks ago, I dove through every governing document that this entire organization has to find the voting thresholds. So the necessary number of votes required in order for certain measures to pass, because I don't know if you know this, there are probably about 30 of them, all in different documents, in different parts of different documents. It's a bit of a mess, and it's hard to keep track of. And I prepared a document to categorize them all in one place. So I think that's one of my greatest strengths, is my ability to go, use my knowledge, find knowledge, and seek knowledge, and compile that in a way that can easily be expressed to people who don't necessarily have the time, for very good reasons, to dive through a whole bunch of disparate documents for a whole bunch of little details on a few little things that only come up every so often. I think the converse to that, the logical reality of the weakness, is that sometimes I sort of hyperfixate. Sometimes I focus on doing one thing. I'm like, I have to do this thing. If I can't do this thing, then the world is going to end. Oh dear Lord, I didn't do the thing. My world is over. And sometimes I miss the details. I miss how that's affecting other people, how it's affecting myself, and how I can better help other people reach their goals. And I think the way that I can combat that is just to check myself. You know, sometimes you just have to take a step back and say, hey, you're doing too much, you're thinking too much about this, you're worrying too much, and you're not listening to the people around you. I think that's really important too, as well as to listen to what other people want, what they're asking of you and what they're expecting of you, and not to put too high of an expectation on yourself to the point where you burn yourself out and lead yourself to become completely ineffective in the name of effectiveness. Was that all the parts of your question?
Yeah, that was it. Thank you.
So I think my greatest strength, at least in regards to Speaker, is my experience and my openness. To quote Allstate, I believe it is, I know a thing or two because I've seen a thing or two. I've been around this campus for 5 years. I've been in a lot of different leadership positions. I've done a lot of different things. I've ran events. I've ran 12-hour concerts with tens of thousands of dollars of budgets. I've been a member of IRHA Parliament, where I've debated just like we do here tonight. I've been a member of Senate. I'm the second most senior senator here tonight. I was seated in the beginning of September, so just a couple of moments after Senator Thornton. That is to say, I've been around a long time. And I've done a lot. I've written a lot of constitutions. I've written bylaws. I've written bills for lots of different organizations and lots of different bodies. And to couple that, I like to use that experience to help others. There's a reason I sit in the Senate office as much as I do. One, it's because I genuinely enjoy the people that I work with and that I'm around. But it's also to offer my ear, to offer my voice, to help. I've helped several people write bills this year. I've helped people solve major problems. I've been a part of major discussions. There's very few bills that come across the Senate floor that aren't major that I haven't already talked to somebody about it before. It's why I do what I do. I love to help. And that's one of the biggest roles as Speaker. And I think that's one of my greater strengths, is that I want to, and I'm so willing, and I have this experience doing so. Perhaps slightly surprisingly then, my greatest weakness, I would say, is that I can be intimidating to approach. I understand that. I talk a lot. I'm loud. I know that that's kind of who I am. But I think anybody that really gets to know me for more than a couple minutes makes that first step, or if I make that first step, it's why I reach out to people like I do, and try to overcome that little bit of a barrier that I'm really not. I tend to be a pretty approachable person, but I know at that first glance I can be. And that's something that I try to address just by reaching out and making those connections and saying hi to people and getting to know people. It's one of my ways that I address it. And definitely I stop to listen. And maybe sometimes pause my voice, talk a little softer.
All right, thank you.
It may not be my biggest strength, but it sure is my favorite. It's called consistency. It's not quite what it sounds like. Consistency is more about the fair treatment or the equal treatment of others. So think of it like following the sport rules. So even though you might not like it sometimes how someone can slide into third base and be safe, it sure works out for you, so both teams get to follow that rule. So if you get this kind of treatment, then it should be the same kind of treatment for others. There was a bill last term that prior senators, and if you watched the live stream or just paid attention to the Daily, they probably wrote an article on it, you're probably aware of it. There was some very contentious debate on this. About how this finance bill should be settled. And I ended up changing my opinion on how to vote because of some good, solid debate. I would like to thank Mason because of that. He's actually the one that changed my opinion because of some solid debate and a counter argument on what I put on the floor. So I think that's a strength of mine, is being able to consider that even though I don't like that, even though I'm not a fan sometimes that this person's getting the treatment, like if I was in this position, that's the kind of treatment that maybe I would want. It's a fair equalness. My weakness is that sometimes I'm so caught up in the bigger pictures that I miss the details. The way to fix that is just to take a breath, take some extra time, review material. Sometimes it's editing an image, my 3D render. It used to be shelving books at the library because I used to be an aide at the public library and I'd shelve one over instead of in the right spot. Yeah, that's what I would say.
All right, thank you guys. Those were excellent elaborations. I yield. There we go.
Senator Topati.
I do have a question. Coming from a cultural background, how do you think, as a speaker, you would go about making people from cultural backgrounds feel more comfortable becoming a part of Student Senate and kind of getting them more involved in even just student government in general?
Thank you very much. That's an excellent question. It's probably one of the most important big picture issues facing student government is how do we get more than just, quite frankly, a white viewpoint in a student organization in a predominantly white institution. And I mean, that's very difficult at times when everyone trying to come up with that solution is white. So I guess one of the things I would like to highlight is the efforts that have already been taken by student government. In the last year, we have began holding these multicultural town halls. They're designed for people of color and international students, identity-based communities, and pretty much anyone who feels that they are not being represented by student government to come to a meeting with other members of student government and talk candidly about who they are, their experiences, and what's bothering them around campus. And I've attended several of those. And, you know, it's really helped open my eyes and broaden my horizons and understanding of how I've limited my own viewpoint. And I think that that's indispensable to us. And I think that alone begins to help bring people into student government, seeing that we're listening, we care, and we'd like to hear your concerns and make our viewpoints better. Another thing that we've also done is specifically a multicultural, I forget what it's called, but all of us did it, the session with the election commissioner explaining how to run for Senate. We had one that was with our Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Alyana Booman, that was specifically targeted to underserved communities. That, I think, was incredibly important. Just holding events as a student government and saying, we want a diverse attendance here. We want people who aren't thinking like us to come, who don't have the same experiences, who have grown up and lived in entirely different circumstances than us, to come and tell us their thoughts, their concerns, what we're doing wrong, what we can do better, and how we can help. And I think that as speaker, it would be my goal to expand upon those, hold those events more frequently, go directly to clubs that represent underserved communities and say, hey, we are student government, we serve you, we represent your voice, we are the representative of student opinion on this campus. We want to hear your input, and we'd like for people in your organization to know about us and feel free and willing and anyone who's interested, come out here, join us, and put in the work with us. And we'd be overjoyed to have you. I think that is really the key to making student government simply more representative of the student body, which it far too frequently has not been.
I think Senator Bruick touched on an excellent point there, that a lot of members of Senate that have come through over the years have said that, oh, so-and-so invited me, or I talked to this person, or this specific individual that was already a member of student government invited me or made me run. And that's something that I think is a very, very powerful tool for us to continue to get new people involved. One of the jobs of speaker is to oversee outreach credits. Every member of Senate and every member of Senate at least is required to do 2 outreach credits. And I think they're a tool that's underutilized. One of our biggest problems is our outreach, getting people to know that we exist and that we represent them and that we want them to be a part of this. We want to hear their voices. So I think encouraging all of us in this room to be reaching out further than just, oh, I'm a part of computer science software engineering club in my example. I'll talk to them because that's easy. Don't reach out to the easy parts. Go to them, meet people where they're at rather than trying to get them to come to you. I think that's a failing on our parts that we haven't done that more often in the years past. I think we're starting to make some steps in the right direction, as Senator Bruick touched on, but obviously there's a lot more work to be done. There always is. Another big part of the speaker's job is, Senate seats do open up. Sometimes people drop out, what have you. And it's up to the constituency councils to nominate somebody to take that seat. And I think as speaker, giving more tools to those constituency councils to help them find more representative people over the course of the semester as people come and go, as a natural course of any student-run organization happens, could be also a great recruitment platform so that we can get a more diverse and more representative sample of the student population in this room, so that we have a Senate that represents everybody, that everybody's voices are equal, and that we're making sure we hear from everybody across all walks of life, across all of campus. So I think the continued focus of that and the continued push for that to continue to work with the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, to continue to work with the committee, to continue to work with Outreach Committee, to continue to specifically go to where people are at, to meet them where they're at and say, please come join us because we want you. We want to hear from you. I think is one of the greatest ways that we can tackle the issue.
I think 2 ways that this could be immediately addressed would be perhaps an anonymous survey, just asking our seated senators and maybe even our cabinet and judicial branch, like, how do you feel right now in your seat? Do you feel comfortable talking about issues of race? Do you feel comfortable talking about issues of sexuality and gender? Do you feel comfortable being yourself when being around your student government peers? Questions like those, and it can be completely anonymous. Just addressing how confident do you feel entering this room? Do you want to stay in this room? What can we do to address these issues if the answer is ever no? Another thing that we can do, because we've done it, there's just some little finicky parts because of some Iowa House, or maybe just Iowa legislation, I might have misspoke there, is that we have done microaggression training, we have done like gender identity training, inclusive language training before. It can't be mandatory though. So we can present it to all of you. It's just optional training. But we can do more of that. We began it in the fall semester around August, early September, October, and then it kind of just dropped off. But we got new inductees. We got a lot new senators that we confirmed, and they weren't privy to that knowledge once the spring semester started. So I think that if we continue those kinds of efforts, and we add on to that with outreach, reaching out to constituents and making sure that we ask them again, like, are you comfortable reaching out to us? What can we do to make you comfortable reaching out to us? There was a huge spark of or influx of students coming to our open forum about 2 years ago saying, I'm not comfortable on campus. These chalk wars are still happening. I don't know how many of you are familiar with chalk wars, but they were bad in 2017, they were bad in 2018, they were bad in 2019, and then they kind of just dropped off, but they're still happening. Are we going to continue asking if our students are comfortable? I think we should. So it's things like this. I think we need to do a lot of internal work, because internal work is actually external work, because addressing how we work with each other helps us work better with our constituents. The tighter knit that we are and the better we communicate with each other helps us communicate better with constituents outside of our group.
Senator Slade.
I have a question for all of the candidates. You guys are all very qualified. You're very knowledgeable, all of you. But we do have a body of, like, the majority is new senators. So, and I know there's been talk of this, so forgive me if I'm being repetitive. But do you have initiatives proposed to ease our new senators into, like, learning the bylaws, learning Parley Pro? I know it's a very intimidating process, and a lot of us, including myself, are not as knowledgeable as you three. So yeah, if you guys have any proposals for educating the body over our rules and Senate procedure so we can all participate in discussion equally, because that's very important and everyone deserves to ask educated questions and participate in our discussion.
One of the often forgotten about roles of the Speaker is to serve as the Senate parliamentarian. So whenever Vice President Ulrich is unsure of what to do in a situation, whatever comes up during meetings or whatever, it is the Speaker who is consulted. So I consider myself very knowledgeable in parliamentary procedure. So I think the most basic thing I can do, the easiest thing I can affect that requires no other help from any other person, is to just be a resource. I don't know that I would say I know everything there is to know about Robert's Rules. I certainly don't. But I know quite a bit, and the parts I don't know, I don't know where it's at this point. I think Vice Speaker Emeritus Advait took it, but I can consult my own personal copy of Robert's Rules that I possess. So I think that's the most basic thing I can do as an individual, is to just be a person who is and I always will be, willing to at length talk with you about parliamentary procedure. My friends in this government and the previous one can attest to the fact that I love to talk about parliamentary procedure and Robert's Rules. It is sort of a passion place for me. So that's probably the most basic thing I can do. More generally, I think we can hold, for those of you who were here, we had our mock meeting right before our real meeting tonight. And one of the goals of that meeting was to begin to familiarize the body with parliamentary procedure and how we do things with regard to that. I think holding more events like that is definitely of value. Perhaps holding another mock meeting of some sort more frequently, not making it just a one-time beginning of the semester thing, so that we can do exactly what we're going to do in Senate meetings, but without actually having to deal with real decisions we're making, actually having to worry about whether it matters whether we pass a goofy bill, a goofy fake finance bill. There also is space, I believe, Senator Thornton mentioned various programs about parliamentary procedure during our Senate meetings. I think that's a very great idea. And just building upon that kind of thing, just bringing it before the body and saying, hey, this is how you do it, and just never really like letting off of that is really going to be important. Just being open and able to have a space where people can say, hey, I'm confused, and in a way that like they don't feel like they are frowned upon, thought of as stupid for not knowing what's going on. Because frankly, I know a lot about this stuff, and I get that most people don't and don't care, and I understand why. It's a lot, it's confusing, it's a 500 plus page book with all the little details in it. It's not a great time. So I think just being open to confusion and being very friendly and kind with correcting that confusion is incredibly important for us to allow the rest of the members of this body to fully participate in our organization.
So I know the pain of kind of walking into this room and going, I have no idea what's going on. I stepped into a Senate meeting September 9th, I believe it was, maybe the 6th, somewhere in that neighborhood. But I was confirmed on the floor, and suddenly I'm a full-blooded senator, and I'm expected to make motions and debate and deal with everything. And while I did come in with some amount of experience through different parliaments that I've been a part of, student government very, very rigorously follows Robert's rules. And there gets some motions that are really confusing. Senator Brooke and I can both attest, like, we'll get into motions where both of us are like, where are we at here? And we're having to pull open the book and start figuring it out. But for the vast majority of the bills, for the vast majority of Senate, it is comparatively simple. There's only so many motions that are getting made. There's only so many things that we're doing. And so this, on the back of your card where it's got your basic motions, that's a great start. That is a great start, but I would like to see something more substantial. I would like to see, okay, here's a finance bill. Here might be a flow chart. Okay, we're on an amendment here. Okay, we're going to talk about that, and then we go back. To help make it a little more easier, a little more of a document that you can flip through, maybe 2 or 3 pages, that's just like, here's my little student government Senate reference. Here's my little bylaws reference. Sort of a cheat sheet, if you will. That's a little more comprehensive, a little more easy to look over. That's something that I would like to implement. Another major component of that, and this does fall under the purview of the Vice Speaker, but the Speaker does have some sway over it, and that's the Senator Mentor-Mentee program. For those of you that don't know, a senior senator, so I believe it would be the 3 of us, Senator Slade, Senator Kuehler, Senator Mays, Senator Schneff, a couple other people in the room, will be senior senators and will be paired with newer senators to help be a mentor and to help provide them guidance. And the Speaker and Vice Speaker, the Vice Speaker especially, but the Speaker does help assist with that program. And that's something I would be deeply invested in, because I think that relationship, those tidbits where you're like in the middle of a Senate meeting, you can be like, hey, where are we at? You can text the Speaker, text the Vice Speaker, text somebody and go, I'm a little confused right now. Can you help me? That's something that I would like to encourage. I'd like to make sure that we have those kinds of relationships, that you have somebody you can turn to. And that's something I would like to be as the Speaker. So you have somebody to turn to that you're like, I'm a little confused right now. Can you help? Or where are we at? What can I do? So between providing a more easy to access reference that's a little more comprehensive and being just the person that you can turn to, or providing the people that you can turn to really quickly and easily and ask them a quick question about parliamentary procedure or about our bylaws or anything like that. One of the things also that I would like to do as I hopefully rewrite the bylaws this summer would be to make them a lot more readable and a lot more digestible. They're really confusing right now. There's a lot of, as Senator Brooke pointed out, there's voting threshold problems, and there's all these problems with them that are just, they've existed for 16 years. There's been 16 years worth of amendments. They get messy. They get ugly. And so I think simplifying them as much as we can, and then perhaps providing, again, a little cheat sheet for the chapter, a little overview that's like, hey, I'm trying to figure out how many office hours do I have to do a week? Oh, it's chapter 4. Okay, senators have to do 1 office hour, for example. So providing a little cheat sheet to the bylaws, I think, would also be a very tenable solution that wouldn't really be that much work on the part of the Speaker. A lot of times we're so invested deeply in the bylaws that we have some of that working knowledge that we could whip something up like that And that's something I'd be very, very interested in doing and like to try to do to make the experience easier on all of you, because I know how painful it is. I just went through it in the last 9 months. It's fresh in my memory.
So, excuse me, sorry. I mentioned earlier that I had the idea for programs addressing parliamentary procedure. I think that you would all get a general idea of it pretty quickly. So I think that this would only take about a month. And the programs would be able to be a PowerPoint that you could download. So they essentially would be the cheat sheet that you would need. I hope that many of you got the email I sent out about a day ago with a basic cheat sheet that is essentially just a snippet from the back of your placard. Is a little graphic that I made for you. That's essentially the bare idea that I have. I have a question for Mason. I don't know if I'm allowed to do this. Are we still operating off of last term's budget, or is that dead now?
Yeah, being it's not your speaking privilege, we're not going to allow
Okie dokie,
that.
cool. Anyways, my idea was just to purchase a couple of Robert Rules for Dummies, but I didn't know if that could come out of last term's budget or if it had to come out of this term's budget. If it came out of last term's budget, maybe we could sneak it out of miscellaneous. If it comes out of this term's budget, we'd have to finagle that, see where it would come out of. But Robert's Rules for Dummies really saved me when I first got inducted. I read it a little bit over the summer. It's really easy to pick up. Robert's Rules is this big. You need this much of it. It's this big. You need this much of it. And I'm only as good as I am at it because former Vice Speaker Ed Vate sat next to me for about a month worth of Senate every single meeting and would whisper next to me and say, this is what is happening. This is why you say that. And I hope some former senators remember how I would help them after that and say, oh, you can't do this. Watch, it's going to happen. They're going to say, no, that's not how this goes. So I really want to be that kind of resource for you as well if you have those kind of questions. It gets sticky, but it's really not that difficult to dissect as well.
Senator Nominees.
Hello. I'm new. I've seen your guys' faces a couple times before this, but from what I've comprehended from the beginning of this meeting, my vote on this is very important. You guys kind of already talked about the culture aspect, but I wanted to know your guys' viewpoints and the importance that you put on not only representing other people's cultures, but underrepresented or discouraged communities as far as first-year college students, first-generation college students, people who are underexposed to college in general, people who might face food security or have different religious backgrounds, or even as far as English isn't their first language. And how would you, as a senator and someone who organizes the Senate, not only ensure that their voices are heard in Senate as someone who's in it, but outside of Senate, sorry, I have a million questions that I want to ask. To sum it up, how would you ensure that underexposed or discouraged communities' voices are heard in your knowledge of them, if that makes sense? I'm sorry, that was confusing.
I really appreciate that question. I don't begrudge you at all for not being able to get everything in there. There's a whole lot of stuff that we could be doing. There's a whole host of issues and communities that we could be reaching out to and representing. So it's hard to, in one little phrase, just sum up and get a sense of what we're trying to do. That being said, again, I think the best way to do that is to go to those underserved communities, underrepresented communities. So going to clubs that represent veteran, I forget the club, but there's a club for veterans, for example. There's First Year Council. There's a Black Student Alliance. I think just going there as not necessarily saying, oh, I'm the Speaker of the Senate, hi, do the world, make me, I'm a big deal, but just as any member of the student body would, go to their meetings, listen to what they're talking about, hear what their concerns are, why they're bothered, and really get at what issues are are underlying their beliefs and their viewpoints. There's no one perfect way to do that, but again, I think that's a really important part of that. I think within our own, like you just kind of mentioned external, like how do we as a student government to others talk about those kind of issues, and I think that comes in the form of our resolutions and whatnot. As the Senate, we are the official representative opinion of the student body. So when there are issues, like for example, we've had, I believe my freshman year particularly and my sophomore year, numerous incidents of just racist crimes on our campus. I think making us think about that, saying this is unacceptable. I mean, this is making our campus unlivable for some people. For just making that point to university administration, to the public, to anyone who will listen, frankly, that hey, this is a problem. It is going to affect the quality of life of countless students. What are you guys doing for our students, for our constituents? I think that is going to be really important looking outward. I think in general, I think we have to focus every single thing we do, and every time we take any action, ask the question, how is this going to impact people that aren't me? I think that's the question we have to ask in every single decision we make nowadays. I think that's just imperative as a body, particularly, again, as I've mentioned, at a predominantly white institution. We have to check ourselves and consider other viewpoints that we aren't thinking about. So I think that's incredibly important. Another idea that has been floated around that I've talked with President Ludwig about in the past and various other people in the student body is getting actual seats in Senate that relate to various underserved groups. The idea, like again, going back to first year council, again, I forget its name, but the group that represents veterans on campus, multicultural student organizations, is getting them in this room so that they aren't just coming up at open forum or talking to us out and about, but are in the same seats as you, being able to ask questions just like you, and being able to debate and make motions just like you and I, so that they are actually being heard and being an active member of this body. So I think that all of those are incredibly important initiatives and ideas that we need to strive for and make certain we are pushing for as a student body and as a student government.
So we're intimidating. I mean, as an organization, we are intimidating. We're hard to get into. That's why Senator Brooke wants to reform our elections. We're from the outside a big body with a lot of money, and we don't really, it's hard to get a hold of us, right? We seem scary, and I understand that. And that's why it's the same idea of going where people are at. To go out as an individual and to reach out to people and to just talk one person to another, to listen. I think that's why one of our great tools, and I would want to continue to see them, I would want to see them expanded to encompass even more, is like our town halls that we've been doing, or the multicultural town halls we've been doing. Because we hear, we just listen. And that's the whole point, to figure out what is happening in students' lives that we don't hear about. You know, we have our friend groups, we have our people that we associate with outside of here, and we hear from them, and we hear from our constituency councils perhaps, but we don't always hear everybody's perspectives. That's something I keep in mind every time I vote, is that I'm not representing just me, and I'm not representing just my constituency council that I hear from, and I'm not representing just my group. I'm representing 8,000. For example, last year I represented between 6,000 and 8,000 residence hall students. And so I had to keep everybody's thoughts in mind as best as I could find out. And that's why, as speaker, with those outreach credits, and with just the culture of just listening and going to where people are and trying to talk to them and listen to them, listen to their concerns, listen to their voices. As Senator Brewick brought up the idea of these ex officio seats that have been talked about, I'm not 100% sure where the bill is at, where that process is at. I know it's something that's been being worked on over the last year, I remember Senator Emeritus Adegarla, my mentor actually, was working on it pretty heavily last semester, or for a fall semester. And it's something I'd really like to see happen, because I think, unfortunately, it's a slow process. It's something that will take time. And I think internally, if we keep working on this culture of acceptance, working on this culture of listening to each other and working with each other to try to break down the barriers to entry, to try to break down the barriers of what keeps people from, what keeps us from hearing people's voices, is the biggest tool we can do. For even when we sit here on the Senate floor, to empower each and every single one of you to be able to talk and to know that your voice is being heard by each other member in this room, so that we have the respect for each other that we should. I think pushing that culture internally will help us externally. That then we go out and we are purposely trying to listen to everyone, to keep our ears open to hear the problems that every single student on this campus is facing, so that every single person on this campus, all 29,000 or 30,000, wherever our numbers are at, are represented in this room. That's the goal. It's to be where people are at and to listen and to push that culture of it.
One of the most important things that we can do, starting inside this room, is making sure that legislation that we attempt to pass that affects certain groups of people, we actually consult those groups of people before we even write that legislation. Last year, there was legislation, it was a resolution attempting to rectify a situation that didn't need to be rectified, pertaining to Ramadan. And students that identified as Muslim had not been consulted. And so those kind of situations can be completely avoided with something as easy as a conversation. Even if you can't reach out to them, like the first attempt of contact isn't successful, there are multiple different avenues that you can attempt contact. So I think that the first lesson is that conversations need to be happening with the groups that legislation is going to be affecting. The ex officio seats that this diversity, equity, inclusion piece of legislation is going to create, there, to my knowledge, about 8 different groups out of the 13 different seats that we could potentially create with this piece of legislation. It would be a bill. 8 different people contacted us and said, yes, we're interested. So there's really big hope that we would be able to create these seats, we would have students filling them, and they would be able to represent these constituencies and say, yes, I am an adopted student. I would like to have a voice for other adopted students on campus, and I would like to say, I would like to write a bill so that, or I would like to maybe write a resolution so that the president, Wendy Winterstein, sees this and maybe decides to do something to further benefit other adopted students on campus. That's kind of the aim of these ex officio seats. That's what we're in the progress of doing.
As an informational piece, each bill can be on the floor for 45 minutes. We have just ticked over that, and so I would like to hear or entertain a motion to extend debate. Question has been called for. Is there a second? All right, we will now move on into a vote. Being this an election, we need a majority of present senators. Currently, there are 28, and so we need 15 to secure the majority for one of our nominees. We will be doing a placard vote this evening, and so all those in favor of Senator Bruick for Speaker of...
Don't they have to leave the room for the placard vote? No? Oh, never mind.
So Senator Patel called the question for the entire bill, and it was seconded. There was no objection, so we're moving into it. So once again, all those in favor of Senator Bruick for Speaker of the Senate, please raise your placard now. And please keep them high. All those in favor of Senator Mahoney for Speaker of the Senate, please raise your placards now. Thank you. And all those in favor of Senator Thornton for Speaker of the Senate, please raise your placard now. All right, seeing that no one got majority, Senator Bruick received the fewest votes, and so we are going to re-vote between Senator Thornton and Senator Mahoney. So once again, all those in favor of Senator Mahoney for Speaker of the Senate, please raise your placard now. And all those in favor of Senator Thornton for Speaker of the Senate, please raise your placard now. All right, so Senator Thornton received 10 votes and Senator Mahoney received 16, which is majority. So please help me in congratulating Senator Mahoney as your next Speaker of the Senate. So we do need a motion, well. Okay. Yeah, so we still need to vote on this bill as a whole. So Senator Mahoney, all right, so it is the body's motion. And so I would entertain a call to question and encourage you to vote no so we can go back into discussion and pass this bill. Is there a second? Is there any objection to voting now? All those in favor of recessing for 5 minutes, please raise your placard. All opposed, same sign. All right, thank you. The motion fails. We're now back into the bill. To complete this bill, we need to fill the blanks that were. Is there a second? It's moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on this? Question has been called for. Is there a second? Is there any objection to voting now? Unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objection of filling Senator Mahoney's name in the blanks? Seeing none, the amendment passes. We are now back on the bill as a whole. Question has been called for and seconded. Is there any objection to voting now? All right. We will now go into a vote on the bill as a whole. All those in favor of unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objection by passing this bill by way of unanimous consent? Seeing none, this motion carries. There's a motion on the floor to recess for 10 minutes. It has been seconded. This is now open for discussion. State your objection. Yeah, so if you withdraw your objection, we can amend the motion to 5 minutes. Is there a second? Is there any discussion on this secondary amendment? Question has been called for and seconded. Unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objection to the secondary amendment? Seeing none, the amendment carries. We are now back on the amended amendment to take a 5-minute recess. Is there any discussion? Question has been called for and seconded. Is there any objection, or I guess all those in favor of recessing for 5 minutes? Unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objection to taking a 5-minute recess? Seeing none, this meeting will be re-adjourned in 5 minutes. I would ask all the nominees to step to the front, to the podium. You also will have 5 minutes to speak, and then I ask that each of you speak just in the order that you were nominated. I will tap the gavel like this when you have 30 seconds remaining. And your time starts when you do.
Hey everyone, you just saw me speak, but I'll reintroduce myself. I'm Andrew Brick. I'm a junior in political science, off-campus senator, and I'm also running to be your vice speaker. Now, I didn't focus too much on my prior experience in my first speech, so I think that for my second 5-minute speaking privilege of the meeting, I'll focus a little bit on that. So in spring of 2020, like I said, I was nominated to the Student Government Supreme Court. Very quickly after that, I was elected as the Chief Justice pro tempore of the Supreme Court. And I believe it is that experience which is most relevant to the role of Vice Speaker. Now, pro tempore is a stupid word. It's a silly title. I don't expect you to know what it is. The pro tempore is basically the Vice Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. And what I did in that role was I assisted the Chief Justice at the time, Noah Heasley, in administering the duties of the court. In that time, on any issue before the court, any case, any issue of question of interpretation of the rules, and any changes that needed to be made to the rules of the court, which govern how we hear cases and decide cases, I was consulted. I was consulted on those issues, and I think that that's incredibly relevant to my candidacy for Vice Speaker. I think I work very well as a person who's not necessarily the head, the lead of an organization, but the person next to the person in charge. The person who can say, hey, I have to make a decision. What should I do? And how can I handle this? And I think that I am incredibly well equipped to handle that kind of situation. I have a lot of knowledge about various topics. I'm sure as many of my friends will tell you, I know a lot about a lot of things. So in any potential issue that can come up, I am more than able and more than willing to be the person when, for example, Speaker Mahoney comes up and says, hey, here's an idea, to say, hey, okay, well, here's an issue here, well, here's an issue here, here's what we gotta do about this here, this, have you considered this, have you tried this? So that, I think, is an incredibly important strength that I'll have in assisting Speaker Mahoney in administering this year's Senate. A little bit more specifically about the other duties of the Vice Speaker, as Speaker Mahoney prefaced this with, the Vice Speaker of the Senate tracks office hours. So make sure that, all of you guys are serving your 1 hour per week in the student government office. I'm going to be really great at this because, as anyone else in the previous Senate can tell you, I spend an unhealthy amount of time in the student government office. At times, perhaps I shouldn't, but I sometimes treat it like my full-time 40-hour job, clocking in at 9 and leaving at 10 p.m. usually. So I spend a lot of time in there, so I'm able to, be there and track the office hours and make sure that people are logging their office hours, make sure that they are writing it down. Vice Speaker Emeritus Advait has a system of QR codes that he uses for his tracking of office hours. I think that's a great idea, and I'll definitely be talking to him about implementing that. So all in all, I have a lot of experience and ability to do what the role requires. I don't believe I have anything else besides that. I kind of used it all up in my last speech, so I yield.
Hi. I'd like to make it very clear that this is not a consolation prize if I were to be elected Vice Speaker. For the last month, this has been my main objective, and I'm sure it was quite a shock to the other two contenders that I accepted the nomination for Speaker, since I was in conversations with them for a while that I had intended to run for Vice. I would like to recap the role for Vice Speaker real quick for you. It is to help Senate run smoothly, track attendance of office hours, send a weekly report to Senate and cabinet meetings to Senate, and implement all Senate orders as well as a couple other tasks. I mentioned some of my goals earlier, but one that's very specific to Vice Speaker is related to the Omni program, which is the mentor-mentee program. We recently renamed it. It's no longer Omni, but I might still call it that every once in a while. To start, one of my duties would be to assign mentors with their mentees, which would be tenured senators with the new incomers. I think this process could be improved by considering each other's schedules during the semester to ensure that meetup times would be more feasible. Last semester, I, as an architecture student, was paired up with 2 vet med students. If you don't know, College of Veterinary Medicine, they already have a very stuffed schedule. So do College of Design students. So I feel like taking those kind of things into consideration, asking you, what days are you available? What are your hobbies? What things do you like to do in school and what do you like to do outside of school? Not only would make sure that you actually have time that's feasible to meet up, but would have things that you have conversation points unrelated to student government, so you have an actual good experience in your mentee-mentor program. Other experience I have that prepares me to handle this kind of role, like setting up large events like the bonding experience I hope to plan, is the Access Walk that I co-chaired while being part of student initiatives. This was the first time that it had been revamped to publicly include students to such an event or an extent. The Access Walk, if you don't know, is similar to the Safety Walk in that we appraise 2 buildings now of their accessibility and their inclusive design. We had, prior to this, not invited students publicly in such a large capacity, nor had we invited faculty to such a large scale. We invited FPM, Accessibility Services. I invited the Dean of the College of Design as well as a lot of other design faculty because they had the ability to actually accurately appraise these buildings for their accessibility and their inclusive design. So this was a very large scale project. And I'm confident that after a successful event like this, that I can be successful in my goals for the upcoming year. The ones that I mentioned earlier, as well as the Omni program. And my experience in rules and helping edit bylaws and write bills will also be of benefit to this position. It's similar to the speaker. I'll still be a right-hand man for you while you need help editing, as I would still be the co-chair of the rule committee. I'd still really like to thank you for your consideration. I really want to stress that I thought really long and hard about this position for probably well over a month now, and I'd still really look forward to serving you in any capacity. I feel like I'd be even better suited to be that kind of compassionate leader for you as the vice speaker than I probably could have served you as the speaker.
All right, hi y'all. Ooh. My name is Ella. You might know me as Senator Slade. I'm a sophomore studying graphic design. I'm a member of the Student Initiatives Committee, and my constituency is residents off campus. So I want to start out by saying that the role of Vice Speaker is, by definition, uniform to the role of the Senate, our goal being to serve the student body as one cohesive representative. This is a position of passion, of involvement, of initiative to interact and communicate effectively within the body to enact this goal. When the body works as it should, as a unified organization, we can establish the projects and initiatives we strive to execute. Something that Vice President Ulrich actually said today to me that stood out is that the Vice Speaker is the official friend of the Senate. I would not be in this room today if not for the enthusiasm and friendliness that Vice Speaker Emeritus Abate showed me upon our very first interaction. I strive to be as impassioned and as inviting as those who welcomed me into student government in the first place, and I believe we cannot be a unified body without forming those personal connections outside the Senate floor. I truly enjoy the conversations I have with each and every one of you. No matter my position in student government, I will be continuing to spend lots and lots of time in the West Student Office space to learn more about you all and to make myself available for any questions you might have. I had a lot. The position of Vice Speaker has great potential, and that potential is reflected in the room right now. Coming into this term as a new senator, I can empathize with all of you in the room who may be feeling uninformed or overwhelmed with the procedures of Senate. I truly believe that this will serve uniquely in my favor to understanding and meeting the needs of you as a new Senate. As Vice Speaker, I would continue with monitoring the mentor and mentee program We've heard a little bit about that from the first two candidates. That's between senior members of Senate and new additions to Senate, and I would like to include the procedure to involve those members who join mid-semester. This is an incredibly important program to utilize. It really brings us together as a body, and also something I missed out on as a senator who joined in February. So I would love to see those senators who join at odd times to be included in this program as well, because I do believe it is so important to unify us. I would also propose the creation of a constituency council information packet for new and incoming senators. Having those points of information readily available would really aid in answering some of the questions I know I had at the beginning of my term, like, when does my constituency council meet? Who's my constituency council? Having that just available to you, along with the information your election commission liaison provides, would be really helpful as a new senator and someone who maybe is not familiar with the process. Another important role of Vice Speaker, along with serving as the Vice Chair of Rules Committee, is to hold the Senate accountable for enacting our many obligations, projects, ideas, and committees. I can only express my sincerity in saying that I, hopefully along with all of you, am here to learn and involve myself in the process to the very best of my ability. To this, I would propose that the Vice Speaker create a Senate project tracker to make sure ideas are not lost in agendas and initiatives proposed by members of the body are persevered. I know we have many ideas and lots of things are proposed, and I also know that it can be easy for those things to not follow through. So a project tracker would serve as a really great sort of accountability booster. To those I've gotten to know, I'm sure I've made my eagerness to learn more about Senate procedure very clear with my many questions. And to those I have yet to meet and talk to, I would strongly encourage you all to ask for clarification whenever you may need it. Please do not be discouraged or think you lack the experience to question things. We've all had a first Senate meeting once, and that's what Senate is about. As a fairly new body, I want to emphasize that this is a process that we are in collectively, and I feel that whoever fills the role of Vice Speaker tonight should have the interest of the whole in mind. Thank you guys for your time, and I look forward to any further discussion and questions you might have for me.
Hello, everyone. My name is Meredith Mays. I'm a junior studying communication studies, and I'm also pursuing a certificate in leadership studies. I'm a current LAS senator, and last term I served as the vice chair to student initiatives as well as a UROC senator. I only transferred to Iowa State this past fall, so within the past, 7 months, I've completely thrown myself into student government and gotten extremely involved. Within this time, I've learned a lot about Senate and the duties expected of us within the past couple of terms, including the role of Vice Speaker. A few months ago, if you asked me if I had any desire to run for Vice Speaker, I probably would have said, no, I'm not qualified. But after reassessing my strengths, weaknesses, and passions, as well as the expectations of the role, I think I'd be a great fit for the position. In the previous sessions, I looked up to former Vice Speakers Crabb and Advait, and I know that I could do what they did and maybe even do it better, and that's not me speaking against them or anything. They were amazing. I just have lots of ideas and everything. One of the first things that I'd want to do as Vice Speaker, as a lot of people have mentioned already, is reestablish the mentor-mentee program. I was able to reach out to Advait about a lot of stuff, but I mean, I think we're almost perfectly split of new and returning senators, and being able to pair people up, even if it were based on interest, which is something I was thinking about, pairing people based on their interests, their traits, and everything, and be able to reach out to one singular person, that'd be awesome, and having a personalized experience in learning about Senate. Another thing I want to do is have a personalized and consistent contact with all of the senators. After having served as vice chair of SI, as well as vice president of the Communication Studies Club, I've learned how important consistent and frequent communication is, because without it, events and projects can be failed or postponed, and there's just issues, lots of issues in student government with communication. I want to ensure that students have all the information that they need and that they can easily get information and resources. I want to ideally check on you guys weekly and see if you have any new initiatives you want to pursue, any questions you might have that are lingering. I mean, Senate is a community, and I believe that if one of us is failing or struggling, we all are. We need to ensure that we're all talking, and I want to really take initiative and make sure everybody feels okay. The final thing I'd want to do as Vice Speaker is kind of push some of my ideas and initiatives. I'm super passionate about a lot of different things, which is why SI was one of the perfect fits for me. An example of something that I kind of wanted to do if I became vice speaker was kind of create a task force for safety off campus and on campus. We do safety walks and student initiatives, and I think an interesting idea would to combine student initiatives, United residents off campus, and then any other interested individuals to create a task force to ensure safety off campus, find areas that are unsafe, things like that. And that's just one of the ideas I had. Overall, I have a lot of ideas that I want to support this, that I have, oh my goodness. I have a lot of ideas I have to support the Senate and student government as a whole. I know all the roles and expectations of being a vice speaker, and I just really want to support all the new and returning senators. I'm going to be a senior this coming year, so this is kind of like my last hoorah, and some of the last opportunities I have to really make a change and a difference. And I just really want to do that for my community and for this organization in general. And I just would really appreciate a position as vice speaker. Thank you.
The floor is now open for any debate or questions you would like to pose to the nominees. Senator Kuehler.
Okay, thank you guys. You guys all seem once again super qualified. So I guess I have a question. So I guess my question for everyone is, what do you think the most important role, if you had to pick one role, the most important role for vice speaker is, and how you believe you best would exemplify that specific aspect of the role? And then for Senators Slade and Mays, since you didn't run for speaker, I would like you to answer the question that I asked in the speaker race. Just your greatest strength and your greatest weakness, and maybe how you're working to address that.
One point I'd like to remind the nominees quick is that each speaking privilege is only 5 minutes, and since there's 4 of you, just be courteous of the people that will speak behind you.
I think the biggest role of the vice speaker, I think everything the vice speaker does is unbelievably important, but I think the best role of the vice speaker is, supporting the speaker. I really think that is one of the most important things that they do. The speaker's job, as I've mentioned, gets a half-time scholarship, which again reiterates how important that job is. And it's a really stressful, difficult, and arduous job at times. And sometimes you can't just get it all done. I think the most important role of a vice speaker is to be the resource to the speaker and to the rest of the Senate, to be the person who says, okay, hey, things need to get done. There's a lot to get done. Divide and conquer. Let's not get bogged down with one person doing everything. So I think that's really the most important role for the vice speaker, is to be a vice speaker, to be the support and the right-hand man for the speaker. And I believe I am uniquely situated to provide that to Speaker Mahoney.
Being the vice speaker is still about supporting the Senate wherever possible at any angle. This includes working well along the speaker, of course, but to me it's still more important to that. I think it's important to be available to senators whenever necessary to answer questions about office hours, help write bills, and talk about the upcoming meeting to help prepare questions they might want to ask. My position may deal a lot with parliamentary procedure, the bylaws, the Constitution, but I want to highlight that I will also be working alongside you very closely. This position is also about encouraging debate on the floor. Goes side by side with making sure that you are supported as a body. Ensuring that each piece of legislation gets its due attention on the floor is a key duty of the vice speaker. And I know that I can ask questions and listen to all arguments. I brought this up earlier with making sure that I came in with an idea of what I thought was right. I listened to counter arguments, and I ended up changing my mind. I also think that it's important to be available to senators when necessary to help write legislation and talk about the upcoming meeting to help prepare questions that you might want to ask.
I'm going to go ahead and answer both those questions, if that's okay, at the same time, for time's sake. So the most important role of vice speaker, according to the bylaws, we implement all of the Senate orders adopted by the Senate. but it's also equally important to serve as an assistant to the speaker and an assistant to the body. So both of those, this body is the interest here. And our goal is to be as representative and inclusive as possible. So just being attentive, listening to the body, listening to your constituents, informing yourself, and being an aid to those who need information is the most important thing, and that is what I would strive to do. And Senator Kuehler, your other question, greatest strength, greatest weakness? My greatest strength is I will get things done. I will get them done on time. I will do them to the best of my ability. I'm a graphic design major, weird parallel, I know, but I'm doing work for clients. I will get them what they need. I think of the body constituents as my clients the same way. I will do everything I can to serve as best I can. And my greatest weakness is that I doubt myself, and I will remove myself from opportunities to grow because I get scared. And this is something that Vice Speaker Emeritus Advait talked to me about when I was considering running for this position. Is he said, don't wait to do more. And so this is kind of me stepping in to a role that I did doubt myself for, and I was nervous to fill, and saying that I can do more. So that is a weakness of mine, and it's something I actively fight and challenge every day and every time I step up to this podium.
Do I have like 20 seconds? I'll speed run.
On the dot.
Okay, cool. Probably the most important role is just, I think, being a communicator. I think that covers everything. Communicating with the speaker, communicating with all of Senate, communicating with student government. And I think that's also one of my biggest strengths, not just because I'm a communication major. I just love talking to people and having relationships. One of my biggest weaknesses is probably get very emotional and get really connected to people. And I try to not let that control me, but I can't help it. But I just get very connected to projects and focus on them because of that.
All right, thank you guys for that, and with that, I yield.
Mr. President?
Senator Bruick.
I move to ask the candidates to leave the room to allow for more candidate discussion. Second.
It has been moved and seconded. I will ask the candidates to leave the room for further deliberations. All right. Is there any discussion? Just feel free to raise your placard, and I'll call on you. Senator Mahoney. Speaker Mahoney.
So I am super excited to see all of these individuals run. There are people they would all do a great job. They really would. Emmy definitely caught me off guard when they were suddenly running. But regardless, I do have a preference. I don't want that to make the decision for you, but perhaps it might inform your decision, and that would be for Senator Bruick. He and I, for a very long time, have talked about being speaker and vice speaker together, whatever combination that may look like. He and I work incredibly well together. I think he would make an incredible vice speaker. Any of these individuals would do a fantastic job. There's really no wrong choice tonight. But I will be voting for Senator Bruick.
Senator Patel.
It's harder to deal with longer nails. But I just wanted to talk about Meredith Mays, who's running. Again, this is like me opinionating my voice about who I think is best for vice speaker, and it shouldn't change your judgment or anything. But I think that Meredith Mays is a great vice speaker. She knows what she's doing. Just like she said earlier, communication is something else she's very good at about. So yeah, that's it.
Senator Yonting.
So the candidate for the office of the vice speaker are very unique because they require individual that exceeds at people scale. They streamline and support the legislative branch so that we as senators can do our job to speak and reach out to constituents and make an actual change. And I want to raise my support for Senator Thornton. Senator Thornton is selfless and dedicated to personal growth for every senator. All the previous senator can vouch for them. And They are knowledgeable in student government and the Rules Committee, which is basically the management of the legislative branch. And they can help you, guide you, and help you start any project that you may have. And there's no one else I would recommend for this position. I yield.
Senator Schnepp.
Hi, yeah, I just like to kind of talk about Ella for a little bit. I met her when I was a senator, and she came in and she was going to run for student initiatives, and I heard that she was a design major and that she loved to do graphics and stuff. And so I came up to her and was like, hey, you should think about like doing something for PR. And so she came to the meetings, put her best foot forward, and really just showed up even when she didn't have to, even before she was a senator at the time. So she really just does put in that time. She does love student government, and she's really going to put in the effort. So yeah.
Is there any further discussion? Senator Kuehler.
This is a very tough decision. I think we've all said this, but every candidate is pretty qualified, and I myself am struggling to make a decision. But I think Senator Bruick is uniquely qualified. He has a lot of experience in student government. He is a member, or was a member of the Supreme Court, served as chief officer pro tempore, and his qualifications aren't the only thing, and they shouldn't be, but the thing that is tempting me to vote for him is his sheer dedication to student government. I mean, it almost baffles me sometimes to see how much time he spends in the office, to see how much he cares. I mean, it's impressive. It really is. I mean, to walk in the office and see him reading Robert's rules cover to cover, I mean, that dedication is quite frankly insane. But I think the biggest thing is that, for Vice Speaker at least, is you need to be a friend of the Senate. You need to be there for everyone. You need to be knowledgeable. And he cares so much, and he is so dedicated. And I just think that he would be an excellent fit for this position. With that, I yield.
Is there any further discussion?
Call the question.
Can we entertain a motion to, okay.
I motion to ask candidates to
Is there a second? Can someone go grab them quick? With our nominees back in the room, is there any further discussion? Question has been called for. Is there a second? Is there any objection to voting now? Seeing no objections, we will go into a vote. Same thing as last time. When I call the senator, the nominee's name, please raise your placard high. We'll count them and we'll go down the list. Starting with Senator Bruick. All those in favor? Senator Thornton. Senator Slade. And Senator Mays. Any abstentions? Do you guys abstain? All right. With Senator Mays receiving 1 vote, Senator Thornton receiving 6, Senator Slade receiving 5, and Senator Bruick receiving 11. 14, is what we need for majority, and so we will re-vote with Senator Bruick, Senator Thornton, and Senator Slade. So re-voting again, all those in favor of Senator Bruick for Vice Speaker of the Senate? All those in favor of Senator Thornton for Vice Speaker of the Senate? And all those in favor of Senator Slade? With no one once again receiving majority, we will re-vote with Senator Bruick and Senator Thornton, with Senator Slade receiving the fewest votes. So once again, all those in favor of Senator Bruick for Vice Speaker of the Senate, please raise your placards. And all those in favor of Senator Thornton? All right. With Senator Thornton receiving 10 votes and Senator Bruick receiving 14 votes, which is majority, please help me congratulate Senator Bruick as your new Vice Speaker of the Senate. It has been moved and seconded to add Senator Bruick's name in the blanks on the bill. Is there any discussion? Question has been called for. Is there a second? Is there any objection to voting now? Seeing none, we'll move into a vote. All those in unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objection by passing this amendment by way of unanimous consent? Seeing none, the amendment passes. We are now back on the bill as a whole. Question has been called for and seconded. Is there any objection to voting now? All those in favor of this bill, please raise your placard. Unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objection to passing this bill by way of unanimous consent? Seeing none, motion carries. We will now.
Mr. Speaker, I move to amend the agenda so that the next bill is 2022-1-017 confirming a nominee, 005 SC confirming a nominee for Director of Governmental Affairs. Second.
It has been moved and seconded to move that bill up. Can that be reflected on the screen? Quick, Vice Speaker, whoever's got it. Is there any discussion on this amendment to the adopted agenda?
Just while he's making that amendment real quick, the reasoning is we want to make sure we get to this one, especially tonight. The nominee actually deploys for Qatar later this week. So if we are going to confirm them or not, the vote should at least happen tonight for them to be here. So call the question. Second.
Question has been called for and seconded. Is there any objection to voting now? Seeing none, this does need a 2/3 majority vote. Unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objection by passing this amendment to the adopted agenda by way of unanimous consent? Seeing none, the amendment passes. We are now on to 2022-1-005 SC, confirming a nominee for Director of Government Affairs with with Vice Speaker Bruick.
I'd ask the nominee to approach the podium. I think Eddie kind of hit the nail on the head. Victoria ships out for Qatar tomorrow, I believe. So we got to do this quick. We got to get her on the agenda now. As to the Director of Governmental Affairs and the role itself, the Director of Governmental Affairs is the one who leads student government's lobbying efforts at the state and federal level. So lobbying for the interests of students with the big legislatures that we all hear about in the news all the time. With that, I'll yield my privilege to Victoria.
All right, so hi everyone. As most of you know me, I am Victoria Philippi. For those who don't, I'm a junior majoring in political science with an emphasis in foreign policy and international relations. It's nice to see this room from a different view. I used to be a senator and president of UROC. In regards to my involvement with student government, I also served as a member of the Director of Athletics Advisory Council, Iowa State University Police Department Advisory Board, Legislative Ambassador Program, Rules Committee, and Special Student Fee Committee. Additionally, at Iowa State University, I'm a part of the Greek community as a member of Delta Gamma. Outside of Iowa State University, I'm a member and advocate for the Iowa Network Against Human Trafficking and Slavery. I also serve as a military intelligence analyst in the Iowa Air National Guard, where I focus on adversarial countries to evaluate information and data to identify and mitigate security threats. To touch on my experience with governmental affairs, I've worked in the Iowa House of Representatives for the past 4 legislative sessions, working with the Rebuild Iowa Infrastructure Fund, or RIF, budget, and then the Government Oversight Committee. I also worked for an Iowa senator at our nation's Capitol building in Washington, D.C., where I focused on veteran affairs and agricultural policy. Finally, to connect my work with student government and the local, state, and national political environments, I recently traveled out to our nation's capital as a part of the Iowa State University student government delegation to talk with the Iowa congressional delegation about Iowa State University's priorities. Those priorities included additional funding for mental health and affordability resources to help further the student experience and campus climate at Iowa State University. If confirmed as the Director of Governmental Affairs, I will continue to advocate for additional funding for mental health and affordability resources, as well as advocate for sexual assault awareness and prevention. I look forward to working with student government in a different format, and I welcome any questions.
The floor is now open for discussion. Senator Mahoney.
For the benefit of the body, when do you get back from your deployment and be able to fully take on your responsibilities?
So it's just a quick intel collection deployment, so I'll only be gone 60 days. So I'll be back before the 1st of July.
Perfect. I just want to say, of all the people I know that could fill this role, Victoria is probably the most qualified individual on this campus, or one of them. Perhaps the only other person that might be equally qualified would be President Ludwig himself. And so I think she'd be a really great fit for our Director of Governmental Affairs.
Senator Keeler.
This is just a question more or less regarding the position itself of Director of Governmental Affairs. So this is more or less for the benefit of the body, some of the newer senators. If you could just elaborate on what the position is, why it's important, and why you think you're uniquely qualified for it.
So kind of touching back to what Vice Speaker Bruick said earlier, it's a good title now, that lobbying at the university level is really important because it shows elected officials both at the state level and national level that students our age and just young adults our age really care about the issues at hand, and that we're able to communicate those issues and show what is going on at our level, because or otherwise they don't know what's going on. Elected officials aren't attending Iowa State University. We're the ones attending Iowa State University. So being able to diligently communicate with elected officials about issues and then positive things as well going on at Iowa State University.
All right, thank you. And I just want to champion everything Speaker Bruick said. So yeah, I definitely will be voting in support of former Senator Philippi.
Is there any further discussion on the bill? Question has been called for and seconded. Is there any objection to voting now? Seeing none, we will go into a vote. All those in favor of unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objections to passing this bill by way of unanimous consent? Seeing none, the motion carries. Congratulations, Victoria. We will now move into 2022-1-005 SC, confirming a nominee for, that's the same thing. 2022-1-003, seating the chair of the Student Initiatives Committee with Senator, or with Vice Speaker Bruick.
Hey everyone, so this is our next election. Hope you're enjoying them. So this is to seat the chair of the SI committee. The SI committee is kind of probably our most student-facing committee. It is, as the name implies, directed at student initiatives. So if a student wants to write a resolution, has a concern they want to, bring before the Senate and have it take the form of the opinion of this body, they go through that group, they go through this committee, they go through the committee for events that the student government puts on. To give an example, I know the Student Initiatives Committee put on a pumpkin smashing event last semester to allow students to relieve themselves of their stress around Dead Week and Finals Week. So it's those kind of events. It's also one of our more, just like the pumpkin smashing event might imply, one of our fun committees that does the stuff that's really maybe not so much focused on the parliamentary procedure, the rules, all that jazz. It's, the fun stuff that's right, near the metal of the students. So it's incredibly important that we, just like all the other ones, vet and fully think through and discuss whoever is going to chair that committee. With that, I yield and move to open the floor for nominations.
It is moved and seconded to open the floor for nominations. The body will now take any nominations for the chair of the Student Initiatives Committee. Senator Slade. Do you accept? Senator Bruick.
I nominate Senators Mays and Slade.
Senator Mays, do you accept? And Senator Slade, do you accept? Are there any more nominations? Speaker Mahoney.
I nominate Senator Keeler.
Senator Keeler, do you accept?
I appreciate the nomination, however, I will respectfully decline.
Are there any more nominations? Seeing none, is there a motion to close the floor for nominations? Is there a second? All right. I would ask the nominees to approach the podium. Once again, please speak in the order that you were nominated. You'll each have 5 minutes, and I will tap the gavel like this when you have 30 seconds remaining, and your time starts when you do.
Hello, my name is Mansi Muscat. I am the SUV senator for this term, and I was the LAS senator last term. So I joined the SI committee when I joined Senate midterm the last term. And the reason I joined it is I love that it's an event-based committee where you get to do so much for the people on campus. After I joined, I tried to be most active. Because I joined midterm, it was kind of many of the projects had already started, but I tried my best to get involved in every project that was going on. I mainly worked with the other members for the Take Back the Night event and also the campus safety walk event, which is tomorrow again, by the way, please show up. But, and I just love to work with everyone in the committee. What motivates me is that I know the events that we organize are for the benefit of everyone on campus. I know that they love showing up to the events, and I know I'm working for them. And lastly, so when I joined last term, as I said, I joined midterm, and it was kind of, things were already working. And the former chair, Jennifer said, sitting back there, was really, really helpful in getting me accustomed to everything that was going on, to make me feel included, to make me a part of every project. And I just want to carry that forward with every new member and existing members of the committee, and just make sure that everyone feels included, everyone would speak up in the committee, and would make sure that everyone's viewpoint is considered. Thank you.
Hello. I won't reiterate my entire speech earlier. I just spoke, so I feel okay just kind of going over the SI part of my speech. I was the vice chair of SI this past semester. I ran for chair and failed, but then I still really wanted to be a super active and involved member, and so I ran for vice chair and got it. And I've been involved in SI since I think October last year, and it's been so much fun. And a lot of the reasons I have gotten into the positions in student government and stuff is because people have been able to vouch on how involved I got in SI. I'm trying to think of specific examples of things I've done. I remember with the pumpkin smashing event, I think I called 5 to 7 pumpkin patches when we didn't get the pumpkins that we wanted, and we all were giving up and didn't know what to do, so I just started calling every pumpkin patch I could find and eventually found some. And recently, we had a Take Back the Night event that we were planning that I was really passionate about and excited about. And when we had to end up canceling it for various reasons, I just started crying. I didn't know what to do with myself. I am so connected to this committee and what we do, and I don't even know what else to say. Like, becoming the chair of SI versus the vice chair would be such a huge thing to me. I guess I know, and plus I do know how to fulfill the role because I watched Jen closely when she was chair, and I appreciate and loved everything that she did for the committee, and I also know what things went well, what things didn't go well. We had so many discussions about different things that maybe needed to change, and that's something that I plan to carry into next session committee if I were chosen. I don't know what else to say. I'm stuttering over my words. Thank you.
All right, hi y'all. I'm Ella. I joined student government in February, joined student initiatives right away. I met Jennifer Seth, the former chair. She's wonderful. She got me involved right away. I sort of had the fast track to SI committee, I guess. Getting to learn about all of the projects that we do, very student focused, very campus focused. One specific project that I'm really looking forward to working on, no matter what my involvement in SI looks like next year, is the Take Back the Night event. We planned that event for this semester, this spring. It unfortunately had to be postponed to next year due to circumstances out of our hands, but I'm really looking forward to planning that event, reforming it, making sure that it happens to the best of its abilities, so we didn't postpone it for no reason. So former Chair Seth has a great transition document. She showed our committee, very thorough, very well thought out. I know that both of these candidates have been very involved in SI committee as well, and we are left in good hands. We have lots of projects planned for next year, and we have projects actually this semester. Our safety walk that I've been lucky enough to be involved in the planning for, making graphics for SI, promoting our events. Just really enjoyed my time in this committee, and it would be great to serve a leadership position, but I know that we can't really go wrong with these two, so thank you.
The floor is open for any questions or discussion. Speaker Mahoney.
So I have had the pleasure of being a member of SI with all of you, so I do know what you can do. But you have big shoes to fill, obviously. Former chairs Advait and Seth have been wonderful. How would you, two questions, I suppose, two parts. One, how would you sort of continue that legacy and perhaps improve upon it? What sort of improvements could you see making to your role as the chair of SI? And is there any new initiatives or new projects that you would like to try to accomplish?
In reference to your first question, both former Vice Speaker Advait and former Chair of the SI, Jennifer Seth, have been incredibly helpful. When I decided to get into Senate, even when I decided to go into SI. I knew I could just text them with any question that I had. I could meet up with them anytime, and they would always be there. So I just want to continue doing that. Make sure that no one is too shy to come up. Just make them feel included, make them feel like their opinion matters. I'm sorry, what was the other question?
Is there any new initiatives that you would like to target or try to work on?
I wouldn't say I have any new projects in mind at the moment. I definitely want to continue doing the annual and the biannual projects that we're already doing, but I'm always open to anyone coming up to me and saying they have an idea. I will totally support you, and we could go with that. Thank you.
Yeah, so that first question, I would definitely be talking to Jen and Advait like crazy if I were chosen. I mean, serving as vice chair has opened me up to asking a lot of questions already about like what it would mean to be chair, but I guess I would just be asking them specifically what they think went right, what they think went wrong, and less how to necessarily do things, because I feel like that I'm a little bit more aware of as it is now. When it comes to new initiatives, I mentioned earlier the idea of doing more off-campus things and working with UROC potentially and student initiatives. I'm going to make that a student initiatives event now. So now I would love to take student initiatives to try to work with URUC senators or just students in general in Senate and student government that live off campus, are interested in off-campus safety and everything like that. We already have the materials to do safety walk and things like that. And while the mapping system is specifically for the university, I think we could so do something off campus because, I mean, I know it's a huge concern for people who rely on SciRide to get to campus and everything like that. It's something I'm really interested in and I've been thinking about a lot, so.
One thing I have in mind that is kind of pertinent to both questions that Speaker Mahoney asked is working with PR committee or just having a role within student initiatives, and I cannot take full credit for this idea. This is a Jennifer Seth idea that I want to continue, so we did talk about it in our last meeting, but we have had problems with outreach, not due to the fault of anyone in student government, but just problems with participation, getting the word out. So a new initiative that I would love to propose for next year or even this coming year to continue on would be to work with PR and to have a role in student initiatives as like a promotional person. So someone who, we have an Instagram, so someone who could take over that Instagram, promote our events, make sure that we're getting students to participate and people to show up, because we would love to have more student involvement in a lot of our events that we host, like the safety walk, access walk, Wolfson Wellness, are very beneficial to the entire student body, not just people in student government. So working with either PR or someone within SI committee to serve as that role would be something I would love to see.
Senator Patel. Oh, she put her back there. Senator Keeler.
Okay, so I kind of want to iterate that SI is such an important committee. Definitely not biased, definitely like not biased or anything. But if you're like, and I'll iterate this for some of the new senators, but if you love like putting on events, giving back to the students directly, SI is definitely one of the committees you're going to want to consider joining. But anyway, going on to my question is, what do you think the biggest responsibility of the chair is? Because after talking with former chair Seth, she iterated a lot of responsibilities. I mean, she was putting in a lot of time every week. And I guess kind of like another question is like time commitment. And that's frankly the reason why I declined Speaker Mahoney's nomination, is because I'm very cognizant of the like free time I have. So I just want to hear what you think the biggest responsibility of the chair is and how you would address like time commitment.
I think when you say responsibilities, I think it's like fairly split between two things. One of the things is administration, like actually chairing the meetings, actually talking to people who would help you get your event organized and stuff like that. But also a big part is building relationships with people. May they be people in your own committee, people who the college administration who you need to talk to when you want your event authorized or you want any kind of permissions. So building that relationship with people, I think, is the most important responsibility of the chair. And time commitments, I do have the time. I am a freshman in computer science right now. I would be a sophomore next year. I would be taking around 17 credits, but I know that I have the time, and that's why I took this position up. So yeah, thank you.
I'm actually going to hit the time commitment question first. This semester, I already feel like I have a lot of free time. I'm always in the office and everything like that, and trying to go to subcommittee whenever I can. But next semester, it seems like my schedule is going to be even easier somehow, especially because I'm taking a class over summer. So I'm going to have a lot of time on my hands to handle things. When it comes to roles, there are so many roles with chair, but I feel like, I hate to say this point that I said in the speaker thing, but I feel like just being an overall communicator with everybody is like one of the most important roles. Communicating with members to see if members are happy with what's going on, and making sure that their voices are being heard and that their initiatives are being considered for true events. Communicating with faculty, letting them know what we need from them, when we need it, things like that. And then just overall communicating with student government as a whole, making sure everybody's aware of our events. And you don't have to be in student initiatives to propose initiatives and events to us. Making sure that everybody has an opportunity to get involved with us, even if you're not on the committee, and talking to everybody and building those bonds.
I'm just going to echo the importance of communication. SI works closely with facilities planning and management, and we also work very closely with ISUPD, Chief Newton. Also communicating within other members of the cabinet, of Senate, finance director, we work very closely with, and we need lots of communication there. So just making sure that everything is conveyed properly, and within the committee too, like survey is very important, making sure everything is working effectively and members of the committee aren't feeling misheard or underrepresented is very important as well. So that overall communication, I'd say, is the most important role of committee chair of any committee.
All right, thank you guys, and with that I yield.
Is there any further questions or discussion on the bill as a whole? Question has been called for. Is there a second? It has been, or is there any objection to moving on to a vote? You state your objection.
I would like to ask, I would like to ask the body's motion to ask whether or not this is more discussion.
So your motion has already been seconded, so it is the body's, and so we'll have to vote on the objection. So is there any further discussion on this objection? Vice Speaker Bruick.
So I just want to give everyone a little context as to what's happening. A motion was made and seconded, and I hope I've been convincing in saying in my reason before I'm objecting to it. I'd like to have a little bit more discussion without the three of them in the room. But under our parliamentary procedure, once a motion is seconded, we can't just have it go away. So what we're going to need to do, and what I'm going to ask all of you to do, is after my speaking privilege, I'm going to call the question. I would ask for a second, and then when it gets time, I would like us all to vote no, so that I can then go back and make the motion to ask the candidates to leave the room. Well, then I withdraw my objection, and we still on the vote for the previous question. We can vote no on previous question. All right, then I guess I'll ask you all to vote yes on this. I apologize to sustain the objection, which means we won't be voting yet. I apologize for the confusion.
It's been, is there any objection to voting on the objection now? So once again, clarifying, voting yes on this objection will have us go back into debate. Voting no means we would go straight into voting. And so all those in favor, voting yes on the objection, please raise your placard now. All opposed, same sign. All right, the objection is sustained, and so we will go back into discussion on the bill as a whole. It has been moved and seconded. Candidates, I would please ask you to leave the room, and we will come and grab you when the time is needed. Vice Speaker Bruick.
Sorry about that, y'all. I just feel it's very important that we have some discussion just among ourselves to allow us to be very honest about how we feel vetting is important. So I also wanted to speak on the three candidates, and I want to say that I think that they're all incredible. I haven't heavily been involved with SI, but I know all the candidates pretty well, and I know that they are doing great work, and they have done great work. So I don't want anyone to get the wrong idea. But with that, I would like to say I will be supporting Senator Mays for SI chair. I believe, again, not to disparage anyone else, but that she has been truly incredible in her short time on the SI committee. A little bit about Meredith is that she joined as an at-large, and in a move that I believe is very, very unprecedented in student government, became the vice chair of Student Initiatives Committee as an at-large. So she was the second in command alongside Jen in leading this committee. I mean, that's, not even getting into the details, if that doesn't talk about how dedicated she was to this committee, I don't know what will. So I just really want to say that I believe she's done incredible work. And, you know, I don't think that there's any downside. I think, as she said herself, the biggest flaw she has about SI is that she probably cares too much. And if that's a knock, then I don't think that's a knock. I think that is only bolsters the strength of her candidacy. With that, I yield.
Is there any further discussion on the bill as a whole? Seeing none, is there a motion to bring the candidates back into the room? It has been moved and seconded. President Ludwig, can you go grab them for us? All right, so once they re-enter the room, we will do the same as the first two elections. We will go Mahasker, Mays, and Slade. Please raise your placards high when I call for their name. All right. Question has been called for. In second, is there any objection to voting now? Seeing none, we will move into a vote. So all those in favor of Senator Maskar for being the next chair of the Student Initiatives Committee, please raise your placards high now. All those in favor of Senator Mays? And all those in favor of Senator Slade? All right, thank you. With majority being 14 and Senator Mays receiving 17 votes, please help me congratulate our next chair of the Student Initiatives Committee. It has been moved and seconded to fill the blank with Senator Mays' name. Is there any discussion on this? Question has been called for and seconded. Is there any objection to voting now? Seeing none, we will go into a vote. All those in favor of the amendment, unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objection by passing this amendment by way of unanimous consent? Seeing none, the amendment passes. We are back on the bill as a whole. Is there any discussion? Question has been called for and seconded. There's been an objection on the motion to move previous question. Your friendly amendment will be accepted. So back on the bill as a whole, is there any discussion? Question is in second. Is there any objection to voting now? Seeing none, we'll move into a vote. All those in favor, unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objection to passing this bill by way of unanimous consent? Seeing none, the motion carries. We will now move on to 2022-1-004 SG, seating a clerk to the Senate with Senator Mahoney, or Speaker Mahoney.
So essentially, the clerk of the Senate is the person taking all of our rules, all of our minutes. They sit next to Vice Speaker Ulrich over there. It's kind of a grueling job. I wouldn't want to do it, but Vice Speaker Ulrich has nominated Natalie, right? I'm sorry, Natalie Jeffson. So if you can just go up, speak why you're qualified, why you want it. Thank you.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Natalie Jeffson. I am a junior in Human Development and Family Studies. This is my first official experience with student government. I was originally interested. I knew quite a few people on student government last year, so that was how I got interested. I've watched several meetings online, virtually, to support my friends, I guess. I wasn't necessarily ready for a voting role on student government, so I felt like the clerk position was a good way to serve. My previous experience, I was pretty involved with FFA in high school, so I'm pretty familiar with Robert's Rules of Orders and Parliamentary Procedure, so I feel pretty comfortable with those things. Was responsible for taking minutes for the Iowa FFA Association Board of Directors during my freshman year, so all of those were my responsibilities, and they were put on the website for everybody to see. And currently, I work at 4-H here on campus with the Iowa State Extension and Outreach Office, and there I help transcribe all of the minutes for the committees that the youth serve on. So I feel pretty comfortable with my experience with taking minutes and those kinds of things.
We will now enter into a period of discussion. Is there any questions or discussion for the bill as a whole? Question has been called for. Is there and seconded? Is there any objection to voting now? Seeing none, we'll go into a vote. All those in favor of passing unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objection to passing this bill by way of unanimous consent? Seeing none, the bill passes. Congratulations, Natalie. We will now move into 2022-1-017 SC, confirming a nominee for Director of Academic Affairs with Vice Speaker Bruick.
Hi, everyone. It's another confirmation. We're confirming academic affairs. Academic affairs is, I feel like pretty self-explanatory, deals with representing student voices with regard to the academic goings-on of the university. With that, I will yield to the nominee for their opening speech.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ann Lent. I am a sophomore studying political science and international studies, and I've got minors in psychology and music. I'm coming off a year as the senator representing the Panhellenic sororities, and as vice chair of the Public Relations Committee. It's a big deal. I'm here today to ask for your confirmation as the next Director of Academic Affairs. I was inspired to run for this position by my predecessor, Emily Roberts. I currently serve as the Vice President of Public Relations for the Collegiate Panhellenic Council Executive Board, which Emily served on last year. It's through her example that I was shown that it is possible to be successful and to achieve great things through this position of academic affairs in combination with another executive role. According to the Student Government website, one of the desired traits of someone in the position of Director of Academic Affairs is someone who is comfortable being in contact with faculty and many times being the only student in a room of faculty. Well, as any only child can tell you, I am far too familiar with being the only person under 50 in any given room. In all seriousness, I am the daughter of a teacher and a post-community college professor, and I've spent my 20 years of life understanding the importance of a quality education. And I've grown to understand the intricacies of how our education can be improved at the level of faculty and staff. I spent a year in the Senate, as you soon will, being in close contact with my constituents and getting practice in hearing their concerns with their experience here at Iowa State. Things like testing center concerns and issues in reporting prep week violations have affected students around me, myself included, and I want to take action to resolve these issues. I want to be your voice as students to improve how we get an education here, and I hope you'll grant me that chance here today. Thank you for your time.
We'll now move into a period of debate or questions for the nominee. Senator Yonting.
So the Director of Academic Affairs is also part of the Faculty Senate. So what role would you see yourself playing in that?
Yeah, I think that seat is meant to be a voice for the students in a place where I think we as students get into our own little bubble and we don't really hear the outside voices of the faculty, and I think the same happens there. So being a voice for our little fly on the wall of what's going on with the students would be really helpful for the Faculty Senate to hear.
Ayo.
Is there any further discussion or questions for the nominee? Seeing none, we will move into a period. Is there any objections to voting now? Seeing none, we will go into a vote. All those in unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objections of passing this bill by way of unanimous consent? Seeing none, the motion carries. Congratulations, Anne.
Thank you.
Vice Speaker Bruick.
I move to amend the agenda to place 2022-1-008 SC, confirming a nominee for Finance Director, just below the bill confirming a nominee for a Director of Academic Affairs.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt or to amend the adopted agenda. With the amendment on the screen, we will now enter into a period of discussion. Senator Bruick. Vice Speaker.
Yeah, it's very important that we get the Finance Director confirmed today. There's a whole process getting a P card. It's, a lot, so it's important that we get it confirmed tonight. So I'm going to move that above. This amendment moves it above our next election for the Student Fee Committee, which could also take quite a bit. So with that, I yield and call the question.
Second.
Is there any objection to moving into a vote now? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objections to adopting this amendment by way of unanimous consent? Seeing no objections, the amendment passes. We will now move into 2022-1-008C, confirming a nominee for the Finance Director with Vice Speaker Bruick.
Yeah, it looks like kids approaching the podium. So this is a nominee for Finance Director. This is another one of our incredibly important positions. The Finance Director runs all our finance stuff. They handle all our purchases as a student organization. There's a lot more I could get into. They had the Finance Committee. It's a very, very big role. It gets a 3/4 tuition scholarship. It's important. So feel free to please go all out and asking Kit the questions you got for him and trying to understand his abilities and what he's intending to do in this role.
Yeah, so hi everyone, my name is Kit Claiborne. I am a sophomore in animal ecology and biology, and last year I was on the Finance Committee and the Diversity Inclusion Committee, and I also had the opportunity to be the first Financial Outreach and Reduction of Disparity Director. Kind of what that is I reached out to multicultural, international identity-based clubs and organizations on campus so they can have funding and know the process of annual allocations. And then just another qualification I have, as ex-finance director Zastro said, the last 2 years I have been working on a bill to fund a gender-neutral bathroom. So I do have experience with student government as I was in Finance Committee last year for funding, but I also have experience working with the university as I will in this role. And I also currently sit on the Cyroy Board of Trustees, so I currently have face-to-face contact with one of our biggest funding partners. And I am open to questions.
We'll now move into a period of debate and questions for the nominee. We will start off with Senator Slade.
Yeah, hi. I would just like to take a moment to talk about former Senator Claiborne's expertise. He has been on Senate. He's been heavily involved. He spoke to his involvement and how that would benefit him as Finance Director, and I fully vouch behind him. I know he'll do a great job, and I encourage you all to vote for him. I yield.
Senator Kuehler.
Okay, there you go. I agree with everything Senator Slade said, and to add to that, I do have a question. So I believe the relationship between the Senate and executive branch is very important, and as Vice Speaker Bruick alluded to, the position of Finance Director is one of the more important cabinet positions. So kind of to add on to that, like the relationship between Senate and Finance Director is important. So I guess I'm just wondering if you're going to be taking any specific steps to ensure good communication between yourself and Senate.
Yeah, so the main thing that I want people to know is obviously I am on the executive branch, but I'm also technically an officer of the Senate. So during finance bills, I do have speaking privileges. So I am one of the cabinet positions that have more of a direct contact with Senate during meetings. And obviously during meetings, I am open to all questions about finances. But outside of Senate, I feel like that's where the most information comes. PNC can be hard. I read through it last year. And speaking with my constituents, not just in student government, but outside of student government, I realized that it can be hard to know exactly what the finances are. And as most people here, I also live in the MU. I also have to increase my office hours, so I will be here more often. But using that specific time allotted for me to talk to the senators, emails open. I usually email in less than an hour. Love answering emails. I'm also addicted to my phone, so if you text me, I'll see it there. But just being that person that if someone just has a normal question just about Senate, because I was a senator last year, I also was an at-large my freshman year, but not just that, but just having those finance questions and being open to all questions during the day, during night. And like I said earlier, during my office hours, I kind of just want to leave the door open where there isn't that wall of having to, you can just walk in and just ask me questions.
All right, that definitely answered my question. With that, I yield.
Senator Schnepp.
I knew Kit before I was in student government, and he's just overall like an amazing person, so organized, so dedicated to his studies, and is just overall just is very qualified for this position. You can hear the passion that he has for finance, even though that's not related to his major so much, and he just loves student government so much, so he's definitely perfect fit for the role.
Senator Agba.
Not to harp too much on what everyone else said about Kit's qualifications. He, in my time being in the DEI committee, I believe was the only one that had his project completed with the gender-neutral bathrooms, and I believe that he is extremely qualified for this position. And I would also like to ask a question. You said that you had plans on connecting like multicultural groups with like their funding. Do you have any projects or plans to go about that?
Yeah, so last year when I actually got the Ford position, it was kind of during a time where I kind of got busy and I really didn't know exactly what Ford was or what to do. And I feel like the opportunity of having and being in that position for the first time, I understood what it actually took to be the Financial Outreach and Reduction of Disparity Director. And it's not just a position. Obviously, I was a senator. I don't get any recognition. But also being a part of D&I, I got more of an understanding of how to reach out to multicultural organizations. And I feel like the thing that I didn't have last year was I didn't have direct connection with them. I wasn't in any organizations that are identity-based because student government is my only organization that I'm a part of. But next year I want to, as finance director, I want to go to those organization meetings and I want to say, I am here, I'm your finance director, but there also is this position that I will appoint with the help of the diversity inclusion director and make sure that they're known on campus because obviously I did my part. I emailed organizations that I felt needed to have that information, but I wasn't seen there, and I feel like that's where I didn't do my best in that Ford position. And coming into finance director, I know what I can do for that position, and I have someone else that can do that, but also me, myself, as finance director, would go to those organizations and talk and make sure that they know what annual allocations are, they know how to read PNC, and to get their understanding, because coming from a person who has read PNC for a whole year, I understand it, but if there is an organization on campus that might not know what it means, and that's the reason that is hinders them from getting funding, I want to be the reason to help that.
Is there any further discussion or questions for the nominee? Question has been called for and seconded. Is there any objection to voting now? Seeing none, we will go into a vote. All those in favor of use unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objections to passing this bill by way of unanimous consent? Seeing none, the motion carries. Congratulations, Kit.
Thank you.
We will now move into 2022-1-006 SG, electing a senator to the Student Fees and Tuition Committee with Vice Speaker Bruick.
Hey guys, it's another election. This is for our Senate seat on the Student Fee and Tuition Committee. It's relatively self-explanatory. This committee is the one that's setting the fees and tuition for, the next year for students, all the stuff we have to pay, basically. I don't think there's too much to preface it with. It's another very important university committee. It's very close to upper administration, and it's we can have a very big impact with our voice on that committee, obviously. If there's one impact of college, it's cost. So I'm sure that just like all the other elections, we will vet this one very well, and we will remember the task at hand and remember how important these appointments are. With that, I will yield my opening privilege and motion to open the floor for nomination.
Second. It has been moved and seconded to open the floor for nominations. Please raise your placard, and I once again will ask you to accept or to decline. Senator Patel.
Hi, I would like to nominate Senator Yonting for the position.
Senator Yonting, do you accept? Senator Slater.
I would like to nominate
Senator Slade, do you accept? Are there any more nominations for this? Speaker Bruick.
I nominate Speaker Mahoney.
Speaker Mahoney, do you accept? Are there any further nominations? It has been moved and seconded. The floor is now closed for nominations. I would like to ask the two candidates to please approach the podium. You will have 5 minutes to have your opening address. I will tap the gavel like this when you have 30 seconds remaining.
Hi everyone, my name is Yonting Go. I'm the new graduate senator, and I'm a senior in finance in the College of Business. And starting next semester, I'll be pursuing my master's in finance. I have been with the student government since 2020 with the Election Commission. And in 2021, I served as their secretary, and in the latest semester, I've switched to join the finance committee and serving as their at-large. So outside of student government, I frequently participate in academics case competition where you are given an issue that an organization is facing, and you have to present a recommendation to the organization. Most recently, I have competed against University of Iowa and a not-for-profit case competition hosted by the University of Alberta in Canada. The cost of tuition has been rising every year, and with enrollment going down, the effects can be felt by the students and organizations all over campus. This is especially true and noticeable to international students and international students such as myself and out-of-state students. If seated, I will work diligently with students and the university to provide recommendations to the president and the Board of Regents. My involvement with student government competition aiming at providing recommendations and academic background makes me fit to sit on the Special Students Fee and Tuition Committee to provide insightful and diverse recommendation. I'm once again asking for your support to seat me on the Students Fee and Tuition Committee. Thank you.
The Student Fee Committee is a university-level committee, meaning it's not controlled by student government, but rather by the university itself. And it's charged with setting the various fees paid by students, the rec services fee, the student activities fee, the IT fee, and the like. Representation on this committee is one of the most influential and important positions that student government holds, and its appointment carries a lot of weight. I stand in a unique position that I think will provide me unique insight in my hopeful position on the committee. I'm just stepping out of my undergraduate experience and into my graduate student experience as an out-of-state student, both of which are vastly different from each other, but both are important, as all students, undergraduate and graduate, are represented by student government, and both pays the fees set by the committee. I've been a leader in many different capacities in my 5 years here at Iowa State, across a wide array of disciplines, and it's given me a wide perspective of the student body. I've lived in the residence halls, lived in a fraternity, been a wholly online student, been a purely in-person student. I've served both before the pandemic and after. My experience gives me the perspective that our nomination to the Special Student Fee Committee needs to have. I've been a treasurer for a number of different organizations and been tuned into much of the internal financials of student government, being a part of several conversations regarding major decisions that affect students, like the daily contract or the requested contract from the Student Engagement Office. It gives me the financial experience to weigh the cost benefits of various decisions before the committee and deal with any requested increments or decrements of the various fees that the committee oversees. In my years here, I've met and worked with a lot of university administration and developed good working relationships with a number of those administrators. My experience on this front would help me best articulate the student perspective that I would bring to the committee and ensure that the student voice is maximized to this important committee. With my experience as an undergrad and soon-to-be grad student, my perspectives I've built, my financial insight I've developed, and my experience working with university administrators, I think I am qualified to be the Senate representative to the Special Student Fee Committee, to best maximize the student perspectives to this extremely important position on this extremely important committee. Thank you.
We will now move into a period of discussion or any questions you may have for our nominees. Senator Slade.
I have a question for Speaker Mahoney. With your recent nomination as Speaker, would you say that you will have enough time to fulfill like actively and fully both roles of these positions? They are both very big positions in different ways. If you could just speak to those time commitments, I yield.
So currently I serve as both a senator as well as an advisor to several different organizations and a treasurer for another one. So I'm used to sort of juggling a lot of different hats in that sense. And next year, my only two obligations would be to be speaker and this, should I be appointed. Aside from that, the committee actually meets relatively infrequently. It's not a weekly thing. And so the time commitment from an individual standpoint is less so. It's more of a being that student voice and being able to work those relationships and understanding the perspective of all of us in this room and all of the students on this campus.
Senator Momini.
Hello, I have a question for you both. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that from what I understand, this position is used to advocate for the fees that are, how would I put this, put on our U bill, like our activities fees, our mental health fees, stuff like that. How would you advocate for people and students coming from low-income families who see these fees being taken out of things that we don't necessarily need, like rec center and stuff like that? I guess people who rely on the money that they get from their scholarships and grants to feed them and house them for the year. How do you intend to speak for them if you were to get this position?
So as for my understanding, with this committee, you see that we don't actually have like the power to raise or lower tuition, but we do have the voice to advocate for recommendations to the president and the board. So I personally has experience with international students, minority, but I do not have those type of experience with people who are more underprivileged, unfortunately. But I would say that it is important to communicate with everyone, not just people who are affected. Every group that is affected, it is important to have that communication, because everyone, as a person, we don't know everything. There are some things that we do know, there are some things we don't know. The only things that we do know is from experience. So I do not have that experience. I would like to learn and hear from them, like how I can help them.
So I think a big portion of making sure that that perspective and that voice is at the table as a member of this committee is working with a lot of the people that we have internally with student government that do have a lot of insight into the situation. The biggest position being as Senate or Finance Director Claiborne mentioned earlier, and that's the Financial Outreach and Reduction of Disparity Director. There's somebody that specifically works on that issue, and so having a very, very close relationship with them and making sure that I'm communicating with them any prospective fee increases or decreases or what have you, and so that I'm getting the voice of everybody and using the tools that we as student government have in place or are working to continue to build and work on. Another big part of that is just in my role as a senator and in my role as speaker. As I said earlier in my speaker nomination speech, or in my speaker nomination, was to reach out and to be at the table and go to where students are at. And so continuing to have these conversations with people of all walks of life and in all financial situations, going, hey, this committee is talking about, or this department is asking for this, what do you think? So that I'm just straight up asking people and getting a lot of, and collecting a lot of input from a lot of different people would be a big component of my position on this committee.
Senator Keeler.
Okay, so my question is, what do you, and this is for both of you, so what do you think the biggest issue that students face when it comes to fees, and how would you specifically work to address that working within the committee?
So right now, tuition increases year by year by around like 8%. What we can do is we cannot like say we want to increase or decrease that. We can only make recommendations. To us, for those recommendations, it's important to actually look at what we are actually funding and do we actually need those type of, do those services actually need this amount of funding? Does that answer your question?
Yes.
I would definitely be inclined to agree. I mean, we have, as anybody who has come through our financial process knows, that we have fairly intense scrutiny as to what the dollar amount, I mean, really down to the dollar, that a lot of the things that we fund are. And I'd like to bring that perspective to the Special Student Fee Committee to make sure that, like, okay, every student is paying 50, I'm just making up a number up here, I don't know off the exact top of my head, but say $56 to the rec services every semester. Make sure we're like, okay, where does that $56 per student go? What are some of these financials that are actually happening? I don't know if the committee has that exact amount of insight, but that's something that I would like to push for and advocate for. The other thing that I think would be an important part of this position and might be more of a communication is I didn't really particularly know that this was a thing that we had any representation on or any control over until I really got deep into student government. And I think better communicating that we have this role and that we have this representation on this committee and kind of saying like, hey, this rec services fee that we pay, and I know I'm using that as an example, here's what that actually goes to. So helping students and helping student government understand some of the fees that we pay and like why we pay them, and then maybe we have extra avenues perhaps through the committee or outside of the committee to maybe push on those for some changes if we think, all right, there's some problem with them.
All right, thank you both, and with that I yield.
Senator Schnepp.
I motion that the candidates move outside of the room for discussion.
Is there a second? I would please ask the candidates to leave the room. We will come get you when the time is appropriate. Senator Patel.
Hi. Okay, just had to make sure real quick. I just want to talk a little bit more about how I think Senator Yonting is more well qualified for the Senator for Student Fees and Tuition Committee. I think that he's well educated in all that he talks about related to student government, but along with that, former Finance Director Mason Zastro also wanted me to say this on behalf of him. So he said that Yonting was on my committee this past year and constantly was asking questions nobody else was thinking. He often asked about issues far beyond the scope of the committee involving university-level issues. He has shown a unique curiosity about financial decisions and practices by the university, which would be an excellent trait in this position. Like, I also trust that he is not a pushover in any sense, which would be well appreciated in this role. I encourage Senator Gau's nomination to the Fees Committee. And just like that mentioned, I was along with him in Finance Committee, and I think that that is a great way to put it. So, yes.
Senator Thornton.
Senator Yonting has been dedicated to making sure that our student dollars are well spent for the past 2 years. I know that he will work diligently to communicate with the board the needs of the students to ensure that fees and tuition are not hastily raised and, if possible, potentially lowered. This is a large role to fill, and we want someone who's familiar with reviewing financial cases and offering suggestions for improvement. I would heavily caution you against electing Speaker Mahoney to this position, as it is very unwise for someone to hold too many leadership positions at once. Past student government leaders have acknowledged this by giving up one leadership role in order to serve in another capacity when needed. And I really urge you to vote for Senator Yonting, as he not only has had the financial understanding as a finance major, but as a prior major of our Finance Committee. And Senator Mahoney will be taking on too much responsibility if he assumes this role.
Vice Speaker Bruick. It's been moved and seconded to bring the candidates back to the room. Could someone go grab them for us? It's been moved and seconded to vote now. Is there any objections to that? Seeing none, we will move into a vote. All those in favor of appointing Senator Yonting to the Student Fees and Tuition Committee, please raise your placards now. All those in favor of Senator Mahoney, same sign. All right. The majority needed was 15, with Senator Yonting receiving 25 votes. Please help me congratulate Senator Yonting. We are now back on the bill as a whole. It has been moved and seconded to fill Senator Yonting's name in the blank. Is there any discussion on this? Question has been called for. Is there a second? And seconded, unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objection to passing this amendment by way of unanimous consent? Seeing none, the amendment passes. We're back on the bill as a whole. Question has been called for and seconded. Is there any objections to voting now? Unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objection by passing this bill by way of unanimous consent? Seeing none, the motion carries. Vice Speaker Bruick.
I move to amend the agenda for the amendments reflected on the screen to table all the bills that we have pending. We have not yet considered until next week.
Is there a second? It has been moved and seconded to table all the remaining bills reflected on the screen to next week's meeting. There has been an objection. Please state your objection.
Can I respond?
Yeah.
We are on an extreme time crunch. There's no possible way we could consider the nominee with the consideration and time and respect that that nomination deserves. I would, can I yield? Yeah. Yield to President Ludwig.
Yeah, so our room reservation actually ends right now. We're supposed to be out of the room at 9:45. Sometimes we run a little close to 10, but I really would like you all to be available to ask some good questions to Emily, to my potential successor, and also we are supposed to be leaving right now, so if we could, wrap up, that'd be great. Thank you.
Do you withdraw your objection? All right. We are back on the motion to table the remaining of our agenda as a whole. Is there any discussion? Question has been called for and seconded. Is there any Objection, unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objection by passing this motion by way of unanimous consent? Seeing none, all these bills have been tabled to our next regularly held meeting. We will move into some quick closing announcements. Does anyone of the body have any closing announcements? Sophia.
If you are a chief officer, come see me after this meeting.
Kit.
Obviously, just a thank you, but tomorrow I'm going to send out committee applications for finance. I don't have a specific time frame yet, but I just want to get those going so people can get on. So thank you.
President Ludwig.
Yeah, there are going to be about 10 or 12 more cabinet nominations next week. So please look through the other cabinet positions that weren't confirmed tonight. If you have questions about what they do, feel free to reach out to myself, Emily Roberts, or any of the nominees that were listed on the exec update earlier today.
Senator Patel.
Hi, I just wanted to say welcome to student government, everyone. And if you guys have any questions, you guys should totally reach out and talk. Yes, that was really fast. Sorry.
Senator Mays.
Please come to Safety Walk tomorrow. We're meeting right in front of the fountain, if weather's okay, at 8 p.m. So please come.
Senator Agba.
Regarding LSA budget cuts, I would like to speak to LSA senators about comments from the mayor and Senator Kornbach.
All right, moving down to this table, Vice Speaker Bruick.
All right, super quick. Great meeting. It's great to have a first Senate. It's an honor to be your vice speaker. I can't wait to get to know all of you down in the student government office. It's in the West Student Office space. You have to be there as part of your job, but I also really look forward to you being there so I can get to know you guys, all you guys. With that, I yield my closing.
Speaker Mahoney.
Feels weird to keep being called that. Thank you guys for voting me in. I'm super excited to be your speaker. I'm super excited for what we're going to accomplish together next year or the next year. As always, please feel free to reach out to me. My important bit of news, Rules Committee applications will be out tomorrow. So look for that in your inbox. I'll send it out to everyone. Rules Committee is super, super important. So please apply if you have any interest at all. You get to see most of the legislation that'll cross the Senate floor. So please apply if you have any interest.
Is there a motion to adjourn? This meeting has been adjourned.